In South America, the Amazon was once one of the most dangerous ecosystems on Earth. In prehistoric times, during the Miocene epoch, from 23 million to 5 million years ago, the region was made up of large wetlands, swamps, and slow-moving rivers. The climate was hot and humid, creating conditions where massive animals could grow and survive. Giant snakes such as Titanoboa reached lengths of about 40 feet. Large crocodile relatives, enormous turtles, and giant rodents lived in the water and along the riverbanks. Predatory birds hunted from above. Many species were much larger than animals living in the Amazon today. Life in this environment was harsh, and survival depended on size, strength, and constant competition for food. So, what makes it the most dangerous ecosystem that ever existed? The story of how the Amazon basin was born is one of the greatest geological dramas in the history of our planet. It is a story that began long before human beings existed, long before the first mammals walked on land, and even before the dinosaurs ruled the earth. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the land that would one day become South America was not a separate continent. Instead, it was part of a massive supercontinent known as Pangaea. This enormous landmass brought together nearly all the Earth's continents into one single body of land. The oceans were arranged differently, the climate was different, and the forces shaping the planet were in constant motion beneath the surface. At that time, the crust of the Earth was not still. It never is. The surface of our planet is divided into large pieces called tectonic plates. These plates float slowly over the hotter, softer layer beneath them. They move very slowly, only a few centimeters each year, but over millions of years, those small movements create enormous changes. Mountains rise, oceans open, and continents split apart. The land that would become South America was joined tightly to Africa. If you look at a map today, you can see how the eastern coast of South America and the western coast of Africa seem to fit together like puzzle pieces. That is not a coincidence. Long ago, they were connected as one. Around 200 million years ago, during the early part of the age of dinosaurs, the supercontinent Pangaea began to break apart. Deep cracks formed in the Earth's crust. Magma rose from below, pushing the land upward and pulling it apart. Over time, these cracks widened into rift valleys. Eventually, seawater flooded in, creating new ocean basins. This process led to the formation of the Atlantic Ocean. As the ocean widened, South America slowly drifted westward, separating from Africa. This was not a sudden event. It took tens of millions of years. But by about 100 million years ago, South America had clearly become its own continent, surrounded by water on most sides. At that stage, however, the Amazon basin as we know it did not yet exist. The early landscape of South America was very different. The eastern part of the continent was made up of very ancient rocks. These rocks formed what geologists call shields, including the Guiana Shield in the north and the Brazilian Shield in the south and east. These regions were stable and old, formed billions of years ago. They stood high above the surrounding land and resisted change. Between these ancient shields lay lower areas, but they were not yet the vast, flat basin that would one day carry the Amazon River. The story of the basin truly begins with the movement of tectonic plates along the western edge of the continent. As South America drifted westward, it collided with an oceanic plate beneath the Pacific Ocean. This oceanic plate was forced downward beneath the continent in a process called subduction. Over millions of years, this slow collision caused the western edge of South America to rise higher and higher. Layer by layer, rock was pushed upward, folded, and lifted. This was the beginning of the Andes Mountains. The rise of the Andes was not a single event. It happened in several phases over tens of millions of years. As the mountains grew taller, they changed everything around them. They altered the climate. They blocked winds. They redirected rivers. They reshaped the entire continent. Before the Andes rose to great heights, rivers in northern South America flowed westward toward the Pacific Ocean. The land sloped gently in that direction. Water followed gravity and moved toward the sea. But as the Andes continued to rise, they formed a massive wall along the western edge of the continent. This wall blocked the westward flow of rivers. Water could no longer easily escape to the Pacific. Instead, it began to collect in the low-lying areas east of the mountains. During parts of this long history, especially between about 23 million and 10 million years ago, the region that would become the Amazon basin was covered by vast wetlands, lakes, and even shallow inland seas. One of the most important of these systems is known to scientists as the Pebbas system. This was not a simple lake. It was a complex network of swamps, rivers, and brackish waters connected at times to the Caribbean Sea. Marine fossils found deep inside the Amazon basin show that salt water once reached far inland. Creatures that normally live in the ocean have been discovered hundreds of miles from the modern coastline. This tells us that ancient seas once flooded the region. The formation of these inland seas was linked to both rising sea levels and the weight of the growing Andes. As the mountains grew, their weight pressed down on the Earth's crust nearby. This caused the central part of the continent to sink slightly, creating a depression. Water naturally flowed into this depression. This sinking region became what geologists call a foreland basin. Over time, sediments washed down from the Andes and filled parts of this basin. Rivers carried sand, mud, and gravel from the mountains and spread them across the lowlands. The constant supply of sediment slowly transformed the landscape. Wetlands expanded, channels shifted, islands formed and disappeared. The region was never stable for long. Around 10 million years ago, another major change occurred. The Andes had risen high enough, and the drainage patterns had shifted enough that water found a new path. Instead of flowing westward or pooling in inland seas, the water began to move eastward toward the Atlantic Ocean. This was the beginning of the modern Amazon River system. The Amazon River, which is now one of the longest and most powerful rivers in the world, did not always flow in its current direction. Its eastward flow is the result of millions of years of geological change. As the Andes continued to rise, they tilted the land slightly toward the east. Gravity once again took control, and water began carving channels across the continent. Over time, smaller rivers joined together. Sediments continued to build up. The inland seas gradually drained. What remained was an enormous drainage basin, stretching from the Andes in the west to the Atlantic Ocean in the east. The Amazon basin became the largest river basin on Earth. But its birth was not only about mountains and rivers, it was also about the separation of continents and the reshaping of oceans. When South America separated from Africa, the newly formed Atlantic Ocean was narrow at first. As the seafloor continued spreading, the ocean widened. This allowed ocean currents to develop in new ways. These currents affected global climate patterns. The position of South America also influenced wind systems. Moist air from the Atlantic began moving westward across the continent. When this moist air reached the Andes, it was forced upward. As it rose, it cooled, and the moisture fell as rain. This process created heavy rainfall across the Amazon basin. The combination of a vast lowland basin, warm temperatures near the equator, and constant rainfall created perfect conditions for dense tropical forests. Over millions of years, the Amazon rainforest developed into one of the richest ecosystems on the planet. But even this forest owes its existence to tectonic forces. Without the rise of the Andes, there would be no barrier to trap moist air. Without the sinking foreland basin, there would be no wide lowland to collect water. Without the eastward tilt of the continent, there would be no massive river system draining toward the Atlantic. The birth of the Amazon basin was not a single event. It was a chain reaction of geological processes, each connected to the next. Deep beneath the surface, tectonic plates continue to move. The Andes are still rising in some areas. The Amazon River continues to carry sediments from the mountains to the sea. The basin is still evolving, though very slowly compared to a human lifetime. If we could look at a map of Earth from 100 million years ago, we would not recognize South America. If we could travel back 20 million years, we would see a watery world of swamps and inland seas where today there is forest. And if we could stand in the region even earlier, before the Andes rose, we would see rivers flowing in the opposite direction. The Amazon basin is the result of movement, pressure, collision, and time beyond imagination. Its story reminds us that continents are not fixed. Oceans open and close, mountains rise and wear away, seas advance and retreat. The land beneath our feet has been shaped by forces that operate slowly but powerfully. Today, the Amazon basin covers millions of square kilometers. It contains the largest tropical rainforest on Earth and an immense network of rivers and tributaries. Yet its foundation was built through fire from below, water from above, and the steady drift of continents across the globe. The birth of the Amazon basin is, in many ways, the story of South America itself. When the continent broke away from Africa, it began a journey westward. When it collided with oceanic plates, mountains rose. When those mountains rose, basins formed. When basins formed, water gathered. And when water gathered under a warm equatorial sun, life flourished. What we see today as a vast green forest was once an ocean, then a swamp, then a shifting maze of rivers. Its deep past is written in layers of rock and buried fossils. Every grain of sand carried by the Amazon River is a reminder of the mountains that lifted skyward millions of years ago. The same tectonic forces that shaped the basin are still active. The Andes continue their slow rise. The Atlantic continues to widen. The Amazon River continues to reshape its floodplains. The birth of the Amazon basin was not a quiet beginning. It was a long and dramatic transformation shaped by continental breakup, ancient seas, rising mountains, and relentless rivers. It is one of the most powerful examples of how Earth's internal forces can create landscapes so vast and so complex that they shape climate, life, and the future of an entire continent. Around 23 million years ago, during a period known as the Miocene epoch, something remarkable happened. A vast area of what is now the western and central Amazon basin became covered by water. This system is often called the Pebbas system. It was not a simple lake, and it was not exactly an open ocean. Instead, it was a massive network of shallow lakes, swamps, marshes, and slow-moving waterways. At times, it may have connected to the Caribbean Sea in the north. At other times, it was more isolated, cut off from the ocean and filled mainly with fresh water. The Pebbas system covered an enormous area, stretching across parts of what are now Peru, Colombia, Brazil, and Bolivia. Imagine standing on a small patch of higher ground and looking out across a landscape that seemed endless and watery. Instead of tall rainforest trees, you would see wide wetlands filled with reeds, floating plants, and muddy shores. The air would be heavy and humid. The ground would be soft and wet beneath your feet. The water in this ancient Amazon was often shallow. In many places, it may have been only a few meters deep. But because the area it covered was so vast, it created one of the largest wetland systems the world has ever known. It was a place where land and water blended together. There were no clear edges. One step could take you from mud to shallow water, from dry ground to swamp. This watery world was not empty. It was alive with strange and fascinating creatures. In fact, some of the most unusual aquatic animals in Earth's history lived there. One of the most famous was a giant crocodile-like reptile called Purosaurus. This enormous caiman could grow to more than 10 meters in length. Its head alone was massive, with powerful jaws filled with thick teeth. In the calm, muddy waters of the ancient Amazon wetlands, Purosaurus would have been a top predator. It likely hunted large fish, turtles, and even other reptiles. Imagine the still surface of a shallow lake suddenly breaking as this giant reptile lunged upward. But Purosaurus was not alone. There were other large crocodilian relatives living in the region, each adapted to different ways of life. Some had long, narrow snouts for catching fish. Others had broad, crushing jaws designed to break open hard shells. The diversity of these reptiles was greater than what we see in the Amazon today. The waters were also home to giant turtles. One of them, called Stupendomes, was one of the largest freshwater turtles ever known. Its shell could reach more than 3 meters in length. This massive turtle likely moved slowly through the shallow waters, feeding on plants and perhaps small animals. Fossils suggest that some male Stupendomes had horns on the front of their shells, possibly used for fighting other males during mating season. The fish of the Pebbas system were just as unusual. There were giant catfish, strange armored fish, and species related to modern piranhas and electric fish. Some of these fish grew much larger than their modern relatives. The wetlands provided endless space and rich food sources, allowing aquatic life to thrive and evolve in unique ways. There were also river dolphins swimming through these waters. Today, the Amazon River is home to the pink river dolphin, known scientifically as Inia. But in the Miocene wetlands, there were multiple species of river dolphins, and some were quite different from the ones alive now. Their ancestors likely entered the region from the ocean when connections to the sea were open. Over time, as the wetlands became more isolated, these dolphins adapted fully to freshwater life. Over time, as the wetlands became more isolated, these dolphins adapted fully to freshwater life. The Pebbas system was not always purely freshwater. Because of shifting land and sea levels, there were times when salt water from the Caribbean may have flowed into parts of the region. This created a mix of freshwater and saltwater environments. As a result, the aquatic life was a strange blend of marine and freshwater species. Some creatures that normally lived in the sea found themselves in shallow inland waters. Over generations, they adapted to the new conditions. This mixture made the ancient Amazon one of the most unusual ecosystems in Earth's history. It was neither fully ocean nor fully river. It was something in between, a vast, changing, watery world shaped by both rising mountains and shifting seas. While the wetlands dominated much of the region, there were still areas of dry land. On these patches of higher ground, early forests grew. These forests were different from the modern Amazon rainforest, but they were already rich with life. Early monkeys moved through the trees. Ancient rodents, including some very large species, lived along the edges of the wetlands. Birds filled the skies, and insects buzzed above the water. The climate during much of the Miocene was warm. In fact, global temperatures were often higher than they are today. This warmth helped maintain the vast wetlands. Heavy rainfall and slow drainage kept the region flooded for long periods. Rivers flowed lazily across the flat landscape, spreading out instead of cutting deep channels. Over millions of years, however, the world continued to change. The Andes kept rising. As they grew taller, they blocked more and more of the westward flow of water. At the same time, the eastern part of South America slowly tilted. This tilt encouraged water to begin flowing toward the Atlantic Ocean. Gradually, the great wetlands of the Pebbas system began to drain. Instead of spreading out into shallow lakes and marshes, water started to gather into stronger, more focused river channels. The modern Amazon River began to take shape. This transformation did not happen quickly. It unfolded over millions of years. As the wetlands shrank, many of the strange aquatic species disappeared. Some went extinct. Others evolved into new forms better suited to river life. The giant Purosaurus vanished. The massive Stupendomys turtle disappeared. The mix of marine and freshwater species became less common as the connection to the sea closed. By around 10 million years ago, the landscape was changing rapidly. The wetlands were giving way to a more river-dominated system. Forests expanded across areas that had once been shallow water. Trees spread, roots took hold in newly exposed soil, and the foundation of the modern Amazon rainforest began to form. As the river system strengthened, it carved channels across the continent. Eventually, it created a powerful eastward flow that carried water all the way to the Atlantic. This flow also carried enormous amounts of sediment from the Andes. Over time, these sediments built up the vast Amazon Delta. The birth of the modern Amazon River had huge effects on life in the region. Fish populations changed as rivers replaced wetlands. Forest species expanded into new areas. Animals adapted to living in dense tree cover instead of open marshland. The biodiversity of the Amazon rainforest began to explode. Yet the memory of the ancient inland sea remains hidden beneath the forest floor. Scientists have discovered fossils of giant reptiles, turtles, fish, and dolphins buried in sediments across the western Amazon. These fossils tell the story of a time when the land was covered by water and ruled by aquatic giants. Even today, parts of the Amazon flood each year during the rainy season. Large areas become temporary wetlands, reminding us of that distant past. The forest and the water are still closely linked. In some ways, the ancient Pebbas world has not completely vanished. It has simply transformed. When we walk through the modern Amazon rainforest, it is hard to imagine that beneath our feet lie the remains of giant turtles and massive crocodile-like predators. It is hard to picture river dolphins swimming across shallow inland seas where trees now stand. But the rocks and fossils reveal a powerful truth. The Amazon has not always been a forest. It was once a vast inland sea-like system, shaped by rising mountains, shifting continents, and changing climates. It was a place where freshwater met saltwater, where strange creatures thrived, and where evolution experimented with giant forms. Over millions of years, that watery world slowly drained, giving birth to the greatest rainforest on Earth. The Amazon we know today is the result of deep time, slow change, and powerful natural forces. And long before it became the green heart of South America, it was a shimmering, shallow world of water stretching toward the horizon, filled with life unlike anything we see now. A climate of extremes shaped prehistoric Amazonia into one of the most intense and dangerous environments the Earth has ever seen. The region we now call the Amazon rainforest, much of it within modern-day Brazil, did not always look exactly as it does today. It was not simply a green forest with winding rivers and rich wildlife. In certain ancient periods it was hotter, wetter, heavier, and far more unstable than the rainforest people know now. The air itself felt thick and heavy. The ground was soaked for long stretches of time. Storms could last for days, floodwaters could swallow forests, and under these powerful greenhouse conditions, life grew larger, stranger, and often more dangerous. A greenhouse climate happens when large amounts of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, trap heat in the atmosphere. Instead of heat escaping easily into space, it remains close to the surface of the planet. This causes global temperatures to rise. When temperatures rise across the world, tropical regions like the Amazon grow even hotter. But heat alone was not the only change. Warmer air can hold more moisture. That means when it rains, it does not just drizzle, it pours. In some prehistoric periods, especially during warm phases millions of years ago, global temperatures were several degrees higher than today. The Amazon basin, which already sits near the equator, experienced intense and steady heat. Days were long and humid. Nights brought little relief. The air was heavy with water vapor. Plants grew quickly and in massive numbers because warmth and moisture are the perfect combination for plant growth. The forest became thick beyond imagination. Vines tangled through the trees. Ferns covered the ground. Towering trees blocked sunlight from reaching the forest floor. But this thick growth came with consequences. The same warm and wet conditions that supported plants also supported insects, fungi, and bacteria. Insects multiplied in great numbers. Mosquitoes thrived in standing water. Termites expanded their colonies. Beetles bored into wood. The rainforest became loud with buzzing and movement. For any animal, survival meant constant defense against parasites and disease. In a greenhouse world, pathogens spread easily because warm, moist environments help microbes grow and travel faster. Rainfall patterns during these ancient times were also extreme. Instead of steady and predictable wet seasons, the region likely experienced powerful storms and heavy rainfall events. Rivers overflowed their banks regularly. The mighty Amazon River, even in its early forms, expanded and shifted across the landscape. Floodplains could stretch for miles. Whole sections of forest might be submerged for months. Trees had to adapt to survive in waterlogged soil. Some did. Others died and fell, creating tangled masses of dead wood that changed the shape of the forest. Flooding created both opportunity and danger. Fish spread across flooded plains, feeding on fruits and seeds that fell into the water. Aquatic predators moved into new areas. But animals that could not escape rising waters faced drowning or starvation. The landscape did not remain stable for long. Channels shifted. Lakes formed and disappeared. The ground itself could become soft and unstable. In such a setting, large animals had to move constantly or risk being trapped by mud and water. Higher global temperatures also meant higher evaporation rates. The cycle of water became faster and more intense. Water evaporated from rivers and plants into the air, formed thick clouds, and returned as heavy rain. This continuous cycle made the atmosphere feel almost saturated. It was not only hot, it was wet heat, the kind that presses against the skin and makes breathing feel heavy. The prehistoric Amazon may have experienced long stretches when average temperatures were several degrees warmer than today. Even a small increase in global temperature can change rainfall patterns, storm strength, and plant growth. In a place already near the edge of heat tolerance for many species, those extra degrees made a difference. Cold seasons were weak or nearly absent. There was little seasonal relief. Life operated in a state of constant warmth. Greenhouse conditions also influenced sea levels. When the planet warms, ice at the poles melts and oceans expand. In some prehistoric periods, sea levels were far higher than today. Parts of northern South America may have been influenced by shallow inland seas or large wetlands. This changed how rivers flowed and how sediments were deposited. It may even have altered the chemistry of the water. Marine influences mixing with freshwater systems created unusual environments where different species had to adapt or disappear. In such a hot and wet world, plant growth was explosive. Trees competed fiercely for sunlight. Some species grew tall very quickly to rise above their neighbors. Dense canopies formed layers, each one supporting different animals. At the top, birds and climbing reptiles hunted. In the middle layers, monkeys and other tree dwellers moved through branches. On the forest floor, large reptiles and mammals searched for food among fallen leaves. The intense climate may have supported giant species. Warm temperatures allow cold-blooded animals, such as reptiles, to grow larger because their bodies depend on external heat. Prehistoric South America was home to enormous snakes and crocodile-like predators. In ancient wetlands and rivers, massive reptiles could dominate the water. A creature like the giant snake, known from fossil evidence, could reach lengths far beyond modern snakes. In hot, wet conditions, food was plentiful and growth could continue for many years. Heavy rainfall also shaped the soil. Constant water flow washes nutrients away from the ground. Even today, Amazonian soils are often surprisingly poor in nutrients because rain leaches minerals downward. In prehistoric times, with even heavier rainfall, this process could have been stronger. Plants had to develop shallow root systems to quickly capture nutrients before they were washed away. The forest floor was a fast recycling system. Leaves fell, decomposed quickly in the warm and wet conditions, and returned nutrients to the surface soil. Nothing stayed unused for long. Storms during extreme climate phases may have been powerful. Warmer oceans feed stronger storms. Though the Amazon is inland, moisture carried from tropical oceans can produce violent thunderstorms. Lightning strikes could start fires, even in wet conditions, if dry periods followed heavy growth. Sudden winds could knock down large sections of forest. When trees fall, they open gaps in the canopy, allowing sunlight to reach the ground. New plants rush in. The forest constantly rebuilds itself. At times, the Amazon basin also experienced shifts between wetter and slightly drier phases. Climate systems are rarely steady. Even in a greenhouse world, natural cycles influenced rainfall. During drier periods, water levels dropped, concentrating animals around shrinking rivers and lakes. Competition increased. Predators found hunting easier. When rains returned, floods reshaped everything again. This repeating pattern of stress and renewal made life both rich and risky. High humidity also meant that decay happened quickly. Dead plants and animals did not remain intact for long. Bacteria and fungi broke them down rapidly. The forest was a place of constant transformation. What died fed what lived. But rapid decay also meant rapid spread of disease. Fungal infections could attack plants. Parasites could spread through water. In a greenhouse Amazon, illness could move fast through populations of animals. Carbon dioxide levels during certain prehistoric warm periods were much higher than modern pre-industrial levels. Carbon dioxide is plant food. When it increases, many plants grow faster. But faster growth does not always mean stability. Rapid plant expansion can change ecosystems quickly. Some species outcompete others. Forest composition shifts. Animals that depend on certain plants must adapt or move. Rivers carried huge amounts of sediment from the Andes Mountains to the west. In warmer climates, rainfall in mountain regions may also have been intense, increasing erosion. Sediment filled rivers, changing their courses. Channels split into many branches. Swamps formed. These shifting waterways created habitats for countless species, but also made the land unpredictable. In certain prehistoric epochs, such as the time known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, global temperatures rose sharply over a relatively short geological period. Though this event happened millions of years ago, it provides insight into how tropical regions respond to rapid warming. Fossil evidence suggests tropical forests expanded and changed dramatically. Species adapted to heat thrived, others vanished. The Amazon basin, influenced by these global changes, likely experienced intense rainfall and warmth. Extreme heat affects oxygen levels in water. Warm water holds less oxygen than cool water. In rivers and wetlands under greenhouse conditions, oxygen levels may have dropped at times, stressing aquatic life. Fish and other water creatures had to adapt to low oxygen environments. Some evolved special breathing strategies, such as gulping air at the surface. Even the atmosphere itself may have felt different. Higher greenhouse gas concentrations can change atmospheric circulation. Wind patterns shift, rain belts move. The intertropical convergence zone, the region where trade winds meet and cause heavy rainfall, may have been positioned differently during certain ancient periods. This could have concentrated rainfall over Amazonia for long stretches. In such an environment, survival required flexibility. Animals had to handle heat stress, they had to survive floods, they had to compete in dense forests where visibility was low. Predators could hide easily. Large reptiles in murky water were almost invisible until they struck. Insects spread disease. Fungal spores floated through the damp air. The Amazon basin was not isolated from the rest of the continent. The rise of the Andes Mountains over millions of years reshaped climate patterns. As the mountains grew taller, they influenced rainfall distribution. Moist air from the Atlantic Ocean was forced upward by the Andes, cooling and releasing rain over the basin. In warmer global climates, this effect may have been even stronger, adding to heavy rainfall. During certain periods, vast wetland systems existed in western Amazonia. These wetlands were not just simple swamps. They were complex networks of lakes, channels, and marshes. Aquatic reptiles thrived. Fish diversified. The boundary between land and water blurred. Large herbivores had to navigate soft ground and hidden waterways. Heat also increases metabolic rates. For cold-blooded animals, this means faster growth but also greater need for food. For warm-blooded animals, extreme heat can cause stress. Shade became vital. Burrowing, climbing, or living near water offered relief. Species that could not cope with constant heat may have disappeared from the region. The combination of heat, moisture, and thick vegetation made prehistoric Amazonia feel almost closed in. Light filtered down in narrow beams. The air smelled of wet earth and plant matter. Sound carried differently in dense humidity. Roars, calls, and splashes echoed through trees and across water. Lightning storms were likely frequent. Warm, moist air rising quickly creates towering storm clouds. Thunder rolled across the basin. Heavy rain followed. Rivers swelled within hours. The speed of change kept the ecosystem in motion. Nothing remained fixed for long. Over long geological time, these extreme conditions shaped evolution. Species adapted to flooding developed specialized routes. Fish evolved to handle low oxygen. Reptiles reached enormous sizes in warm waters. Insects diversified into countless forms. Each adaptation was a response to pressure from climate. Prehistoric Amazonia was not dangerous only because of predators. The climate itself was a threat. Heatstroke, dehydration, drowning, infection, and starvation were constant risks. A sudden flood could erase territory. A disease outbreak could reduce populations. A shift in rainfall could transform forest into wetland, or vice versa. Compared to today's Amazon, which already feels intense, the prehistoric version during certain warm periods may have been even more extreme. Today, seasonal patterns provide some rhythm. In ancient greenhouse times, that rhythm could weaken. Rain might fall heavily for extended periods without clear seasonal breaks. The greenhouse world also meant that polar ice was limited or absent during some epochs. Without large ice sheets to reflect sunlight, more heat remained in the climate system. Tropical regions absorbed and stored much of this energy. The Amazon basin, located near the equator, became a center of biological activity. Over millions of years, as global climates cooled and warmed again, Amazonia changed shape many times. Forest expanded, contracted, flooded, and rose again. Each phase left marks in sediment and fossils. Scientists studying cores from riverbanks and ancient lakebeds find pollen grains that reveal which plants dominated during warmer times. These records show shifts in species that match global temperature changes. Extreme rainfall also meant extreme erosion. Riverbanks collapsed. New channels formed overnight in geological terms. Sediment buried older ecosystems, preserving fossils. At the same time, other areas were scoured clean. Prehistoric Amazonia under greenhouse conditions was a place of abundance and danger combined. Heat fueled life, but also stress. Rain fed growth, but also destruction. Water created habitats, but also hazards. The system was powerful, fast-moving, and unforgiving. The forest did not simply sit quietly under the sun. It pulsed with energy from a hotter planet. Storms shaped it. Floods rearranged it. Evolution raced within it. And in those ancient times, when temperatures were higher and rainfall heavier, the Amazon basin may have been even more intense and deadly than the rainforest known today. The reign of Titanoboa began in a world that looked both familiar and completely different from today. This enormous snake lived during the Paleocene epoch, a time that came shortly after the extinction of the dinosaurs. Around 60 million years ago, the Earth was recovering from one of the most dramatic events in its history. The asteroid that struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula had wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs and many other species. In the quiet that followed, life slowly rebuilt itself. Forests spread, rivers shifted, swamps grew thick and heavy with life, and in the warm, wet lands of what is now northern South America, a new kind of ruler rose to power. That ruler was Titanoboa, whose full scientific name is Titanoboa caragionensis. The name itself means Titanic boa, and it fits perfectly. Titanoboa was not just big, it was unbelievably large. Estimates suggest it grew to more than 40 feet in length. That is longer than a city bus. It may have weighed more than 1 ton. Its body was thick and powerful, with muscles strong enough to crush massive prey. When it moved through the water or slid across the muddy banks of a swamp, it must have looked like a living river. The remains of this giant snake were discovered in Colombia, in a place known as the Cerrejón coal mine. This mine lies in a region that once held dense tropical forests and slow-moving rivers. In the early 2000 years, scientists working in the mine found fossilized vertebrae that were far larger than those of any modern snake. These bones were carefully studied by a team of researchers led by Jonathan Bloch and Carlos Jaramillo. Their work revealed something astonishing. The largest snake ever discovered had once ruled these ancient swamps. During the Paleocene, the climate was much warmer than it is today. Tropical regions were hot and humid, with temperatures that likely stayed above 90 degrees Fahrenheit for much of the year. Cold-blooded animals, like snakes, depend on the heat of their surroundings to control their body temperature. The warmer the climate, the more energy they can produce, and the larger they can grow. Titanoboa's immense size tells scientists that the Earth at that time was not just warm, but extremely warm. The forests around Titanoboa's home were thick and rich with life. Huge trees rose high above the swamp floor. Ferns and palms covered the ground. Rivers twisted slowly through the land, carrying mud and fallen leaves. Fish swam in the dark water. Turtles rested on muddy banks. Early crocodile relatives lurked near the surface, waiting for prey. Mammals were small at this time, still recovering from the fall of the dinosaurs. Birds filled the air, and insects buzzed in the heavy heat. It was a living, breathing world of green and brown, of water and shadow. In this world, Titanoboa was the top predator. It was not venomous like some modern snakes. Instead, it was a constrictor, similar in hunting style to today's boas and pythons. When it attacked, it would strike quickly, grab its prey with sharp, backward-curving teeth, and wrap its thick body around the victim. With each breath the prey took, Titanoboa would tighten its grip. Eventually, the prey would suffocate or suffer fatal internal damage. Given Titanoboa's size, it could likely overpower animals as large as massive crocodiles. Scientists believe Titanoboa spent much of its time in the water. Its body shape and the structure of its bones suggest it was well adapted for a semi-aquatic life. Like modern anacondas, it may have waded just below the water's surface, with only its eyes and nostrils visible. From there, it could launch a sudden attack on any creature that came too close. In murky swamp water, its huge size would not have made it easy to spot. Instead, it would have blended into the dark, shadowy depths. The comparison to the modern green anaconda is important. Today, the green anaconda is often considered the heaviest snake alive. Yet even the largest anacondas are far smaller than Titanoboa. Titanoboa may have been nearly twice as long and several times heavier. Imagining such a creature moving through a swamp is almost difficult. Each ripple in the water might have signaled danger. Each fallen log might not have been a log at all, but a coiled giant waiting to strike. The discovery of Titanoboa changed the way scientists think about prehistoric reptiles. Before its discovery, many believed that the largest snakes in history might not have been much bigger than modern ones. Titanoboa proved otherwise. It showed that under the right environmental conditions, snakes could grow to extraordinary sizes. It also gave scientists a powerful tool for understanding ancient climates. By studying Titanoboa's bones and comparing them to living snakes, researchers could estimate the temperature of its environment. The snake became a living thermometer from the distant past. The Sarajevo fossil site where Titanoboa was found is more than just a snake graveyard. It has also produced fossils of giant turtles, large crocodile relatives, and many plant species. Together, these fossils paint a picture of one of the earliest tropical rainforests on Earth. This rainforest existed millions of years before the modern Amazon. It was a world still adjusting after the dinosaur extinction, yet already rich with life. Titanoboa was part of this early rainforest ecosystem, a symbol of its power and danger. Life in that swamp was not peaceful. Predators and prey were locked in constant struggle. The heat would have been intense. The air would have been thick with moisture. Sudden storms could flood the rivers. During dry periods, water levels might have dropped, concentrating animals in shrinking pools. In such times, Titanoboa would have had an even greater advantage. Large and powerful, it could dominate whatever water remained. Some scientists have wondered whether Titanoboa had any real enemies. As an adult, it was likely too large for most predators to attack. However, young Titanoboas would have been vulnerable. Smaller crocodiles or other large reptiles might have preyed on them. Even other Titanoboas could have posed a threat. Like many modern snakes, Titanoboa may have been cannibalistic, especially if food was scarce. The size of Titanoboa also raises questions about its metabolism. Large cold-blooded animals grow slowly. Titanoboa may have taken many years to reach full size. During that time, it would have needed a steady supply of food. Its environment must have been productive enough to support such massive predators. Fish, turtles, and crocodile relatives would have formed the base of its diet. It likely did not chase fast-moving prey over long distances. Instead, it relied on ambush and patience. The reign of Titanoboa did not last forever. Over millions of years, Earth's climate changed. Temperatures slowly cooled, forests shifted, new groups of animals evolved, mammals began to grow larger and more diverse. The ancient swamp ecosystems that supported Titanoboa eventually transformed. As the world cooled, the conditions that allowed snakes to grow to such enormous sizes may have disappeared. Titanoboa, like many other species, vanished from the fossil record. Its extinction was not sudden like that of the dinosaurs. Instead, it was part of a gradual shift in climate and ecology. The Paleocene gave way to the Eocene. Continents continued to drift, mountain ranges rose, ocean currents changed. All these factors influence global temperatures and rainfall patterns. For a creature so dependent on warmth, even a small drop in average temperature could have had serious effects. Despite its disappearance, Titanoboa left behind a powerful legacy. Its discovery captured public imagination. Museums created life-size models to help people understand its scale. In one famous display at the Smithsonian Institution, a reconstruction showed Titanoboa attacking a crocodile. Visitors stood beside it, staring at the massive coils and wide jaws. The model made the ancient world feel real. Titanoboa also inspired documentaries and books. It became a symbol of prehistoric power. For many people, it represents the idea that nature, under the right conditions, can produce creatures beyond our expectations. It challenges our sense of scale. We often think of modern animals as the largest and most impressive. Titanoboa reminds us that the past holds its own giants. The study of Titanoboa continues to teach scientists about evolution. Snakes have existed for more than 100 million years. They have survived mass extinctions, climate shifts, and continental movements. Titanoboa is one chapter in that long story. It shows how flexible and adaptable snakes can be. Under extreme warmth, they can reach extreme sizes. It also raises important questions about today's climate. If higher global temperatures once allowed snakes to grow larger, what might happen in a warming world? Scientists do not expect Titanoboa-sized snakes to return. Modern ecosystems are very different from those of the Paleocene. Human activity has changed habitats, reduced wild spaces, and introduced new pressures. Still, Titanoboa stands as a reminder that climate and body size are closely linked in cold-blooded animals. The bones of Titanoboa tell a story written in stone. Each vertebra is thick and heavy, shaped to support enormous muscles. By measuring these bones, scientists can estimate the length and weight of the animal. They compare them with the vertebrae of modern boas and pythons. The differences are striking. Titanoboa's bones are not just slightly larger, they are massively larger. When Titanoboa swam, its body would have moved in smooth waves. The water around it would ripple and part. Fish might scatter in sudden bursts of silver. On land, it would have moved more slowly, its heavy body pressing into mud and leaves. It may have basked in the sun along riverbanks, absorbing heat to power its massive muscles. Its head, though large, was not as oversized as people might imagine. Compared to its body, it was proportionate. Its jaws could open wide to swallow large prey whole. Like modern snakes, its lower jaws were connected by flexible ligaments, allowing them to stretch. After a large meal, Titanoboa may not have needed to eat again for weeks. The swamp would have been filled with sounds, insects humming, birds calling, water splashing. In that living orchestra, Titanoboa moved mostly in silence. Its attack would have been sudden and final. A splash, a struggle, then stillness. Even though Titanoboa lived millions of years ago, its story feels close because it connects to animals we know today. When we see a modern boa or anaconda, we are looking at distant relatives of this giant. Their shared body plan has lasted through deep time. Titanoboa is proof of how successful that design is. The reign of Titanoboa represents a moment when reptiles once again ruled certain ecosystems after the fall of the dinosaurs. It was not a dinosaur. It was not a dragon from myth. It was a real animal, shaped by evolution and environment. It thrived because conditions favored its kind, and when those conditions changed, it disappeared. In the ancient wetlands of South America, long before modern cities, roads, and farms existed, a giant predator ruled the rivers with unmatched strength. Its name was Purosaurus, and it was not just another crocodile. It was one of the largest crocodilian animals that ever lived on Earth. This massive reptile turned the rivers and swamps into places of constant danger. Any animal that came too close to the water's edge risked becoming its next meal. Purosaurus lived during the Miocene epoch, a time that stretched from about 23 million years ago to about 5 million years ago. During this period, much of northern South America was covered in wide river systems, lakes, and flooded forests. The land that is now part of modern countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela looked very different back then. Instead of dense jungle everywhere, there were enormous wetlands filled with slow-moving rivers, muddy banks, and shallow lagoons. These waters were rich with life. Fish were everywhere. Giant turtles moved slowly along the bottom. Strange mammals drank at the shore. And in the middle of all this life waited a silent killer. Purosaurus could grow to a length of about 40 to 45 feet, and some scientists believe it may have reached even longer sizes. That means it was longer than a city bus. Its weight may have been more than 8 tons. To imagine how large that is, think of several large cars combined into one heavy body covered in thick scales. Its skull alone could measure more than 5 feet long. The head was huge, wide, and heavy, built like a living battering ram. Its jaws were the most frightening part of its body. The bite force of Purosaurus is estimated to have been one of the strongest ever measured for any animal. Some studies suggest it could have produced more than 50,000 newtons of force when it snapped its jaws shut. That amount of pressure would have been enough to crush bone easily. Even large prey would not have been safe. When Purosaurus clamped down, escape was nearly impossible. Unlike modern crocodiles that often grab smaller prey and drag it into the water, Purosaurus was strong enough to attack very large animals. It likely hunted giant rodents, large turtles, fish, and even other reptiles. At that time, South America was home to enormous creatures, including giant ground sloths and strange hoofed mammals that no longer exist. Any animal that needed water had to approach rivers and lakes carefully, because Purosaurus could wait for hours without moving, almost completely hidden beneath the surface. Its eyes and nostrils sat high on its head, just like those of modern crocodilians. This allowed it to stay almost fully underwater while still seeing and breathing. Only a small part of its body would be visible. The rest of its enormous shape remained hidden below the muddy water. When prey came close, Purosaurus would explode upward with shocking speed. Despite its massive size, it was likely very fast in short bursts, powered by strong tail muscles. The environment it lived in is sometimes called the Pebbas system, a vast network of wetlands that covered large areas of what is now the Amazon region. Instead of one single river like today's Amazon River, there were many shallow lakes and slow channels connected together. This created a perfect home for large aquatic predators. There were few natural enemies that could challenge a fully grown Purosaurus. It stood at the top of the food chain. Fossils of Purosaurus have been found in different parts of northern South America. Scientists have discovered skulls, teeth, and other bones that show just how massive this animal was. The first fossils were described in the late 19th century. Since then, researchers have continued to study them to understand how this giant lived and hunted. Purosaurus belonged to a group of crocodilians called caimans. Modern caimans still live in South America today, but they are much smaller. Even the largest living crocodilians, such as the saltwater crocodile and the Nile crocodile, do not match the size of Purosaurus. This ancient predator was on a different level. Its teeth were thick, strong, and shaped like cones. They were perfect for gripping and crushing. Unlike animals that slice meat with sharp blade-like teeth, Purosaurus relied on pure power. When it bit down, bones would break, shells would crack, flesh would tear under enormous pressure. Once it grabbed something, it likely performed a twisting motion, similar to the death roll seen in modern crocodiles. This movement would tear apart its prey and make it easier to swallow. The skull of Purosaurus was not only long but also very wide. This wide shape helped support the massive jaw muscles attached at the back of its head. These muscles gave it the power to produce its crushing bite. Its body was armored with thick, bony plates called osteoderms, which were embedded in its skin. These plates acted like natural armor, protecting it from attacks. Because of its huge size, Purosaurus probably did not need to eat every day. Large predators often consume large meals and then rest for long periods. After catching a large animal, it may have spent days slowly digesting its food. During this time, it would remain hidden in the water, conserving energy. The rivers of Miocene South America were not peaceful places. Other large predators also lived there. Giant snakes, large fish, and other crocodilian species shared the same environment. But Purosaurus was one of the largest and most powerful among them. Its size alone would have made it a dominant force. Life near the water would have been filled with tension. Imagine a giant rodent the size of a small car stepping toward the water to drink. The surface looks calm. Birds call in the trees. The air is heavy and humid. Suddenly the water explodes. A massive head rises, jaws open wide. In seconds, the animal is dragged below. The water turns violent, then still again. Only ripples remain. Purosaurus likely played an important role in controlling the population of other animals. As a top predator, it helped maintain balance in the ecosystem. By hunting large herbivores and other creatures, it prevented any one species from growing too numerous. This balance allowed the wetlands to remain rich and diverse. Scientists estimate that Purosaurus lived for millions of years before disappearing. Its extinction likely happened around the end of the Miocene, roughly 5 million years ago. During this time, major changes were happening in South America. The Andes Mountains were rising higher, altering river systems. The landscape began to change. Wetlands dried or shifted. Rivers became more defined. As habitats changed, so did the animals that depended on them. The disappearance of vast wetlands may have reduced the space and resources needed for a giant aquatic predator like Purosaurus. Smaller crocodilians and other animals may have adapted better to the new environment. Over time, Purosaurus vanished, leaving behind only fossils as proof of its existence. Today, when people think of dangerous river predators, they often imagine modern crocodiles or alligators. But compared to Purosaurus, even the largest living crocodile seems smaller and less overwhelming. The idea of a 40-foot crocodilian with bone-crushing jaws is difficult to fully grasp. The discovery of Purosaurus fossils has helped scientists understand how crocodilians evolved. It shows that in the right conditions, these reptiles could grow to astonishing sizes. Warm climates, abundant food, and wide wetlands allowed them to reach lengths rarely seen today. The Miocene world was different from our own. South America was isolated for much of its history. Many strange animals evolved there, unlike those on other continents. In this unique environment, Purosaurus became a true giant. Its massive presence would have shaped the behavior of other animals. Herds would approach water carefully. Mothers would guard their young closely. Some species may have chosen different drinking spots to avoid known hunting areas. The simple need to drink water became a dangerous gamble. The power of its bite continues to amaze scientists. When researchers study the skull structure and muscle attachment points, they can estimate how strong its jaws were. The numbers are shocking. It stands among the strongest bites in the history of life on Earth. Although Purosaurus looked similar to modern crocodiles, its size changed everything. A normal crocodile is dangerous, but there are limits to what it can attack. Purosaurus had fewer limits. Large mammals that might feel safe from smaller predators were not safe from this giant. Its growth from hatchling to adult would have taken many years. Like modern crocodilians, it likely began life as a small reptile vulnerable to many threats. Fish, birds, and other predators may have hunted the young. Only a small number would survive to reach full size, but once it grew large enough, very few creatures could threaten it. Its skin would have been rough and armored, its tail thick and muscular, used not only for swimming but also for powerful bursts of speed. In water, it would have been graceful despite its size. On land, it may have been slower, but still capable of short, sudden movements. The sound of its jaws snapping shut would have echoed across the wetlands. The splash of its body entering water would have sent waves outward. Other animals would have learned to recognize these signs of danger. Even today, the rivers of South America hold large caimans, but none come close to the terror that Purosaurus must have inspired. It was a living wall of muscle and bone. Fossil evidence suggests that its skull was built for strength rather than speed. The broad snout was perfect for tackling large prey rather than quick fish alone. It was not a delicate hunter, it was a powerhouse. Some scientists have debated exactly how large it truly was. Estimates vary depending on the fossil material found, but even conservative estimates place it among the largest crocodilians ever known. Its extinction reminds us that even the most powerful animals are not immune to environmental change. No matter how strong its bite, it could not fight against shifting rivers and changing climates. When people study ancient ecosystems, Purosaurus stands out as a symbol of raw natural power. It represents a time when giant reptiles still dominated parts of the world. Imagine standing on the bank of a Miocene river. The air is thick. Insects buzz. Strange mammals move through tall plants. The water appears calm. Yet beneath the surface lies a creature longer than most boats, waiting without sound. Purosaurus was not just a large crocodile. It was a ruler of its environment, a predator shaped by millions of years of evolution. Its life was built around water, patience, and explosive force. The terror it brought to ancient rivers is hard to fully describe. It did not roar or chase prey across open plains. Its power came from silence and surprise. That made it even more frightening. For millions of years, this giant controlled the flow of life along the waterways of northern South America. Then, as slowly as it had once moved through muddy water, it disappeared from the world. All that remains are bones buried in rock, studied by scientists who piece together its story. From those fossils we can picture the massive skull, the thick teeth, and the heavy body sliding into ancient rivers. The idea of a river monster has always fascinated people. In many cultures, stories speak of huge creatures hiding beneath dark water, waiting silently in the depths. When we think about real river monsters from the distant past, one name often stands out: the Megalodon. This ancient shark was not a myth. It was a real animal that once ruled the oceans. Its scientific name is Otodus megalodon, and it lived millions of years ago. It was one of the largest and most powerful predators that ever existed. Megalodon lived during a time when the Earth looked very different. It appeared during the Miocene epoch, around 23 million years ago, and survived until about 3.6 million years ago, during the Pliocene epoch. During those long stretches of time, continents were still moving toward their modern positions. The climate was warmer than today. Sea levels were often higher. Vast, shallow seas covered many coastal regions. These warm, rich waters were perfect hunting grounds for a giant shark. Scientists believe Megalodon could grow up to about 60 feet long and possibly even longer. Some estimates suggest lengths of nearly 70 feet, though most experts agree on around 50 to 60 feet. That would make it about 3 times longer than the largest great white sharks alive today. Its weight may have reached as much as 50 to 70 tons. Its mouth alone was enormous, wide enough to swallow a small car. The teeth of Megalodon are among the largest shark teeth ever found. Some are more than 7 inches long. They are thick, triangular, and serrated, built to slice through flesh and bone. Unlike many ancient animals, Megalodon did not leave behind a complete skeleton. Sharks are made mostly of cartilage, not bone, and cartilage does not fossilize easily. What we mostly find are teeth. These teeth have been discovered on every continent except Antarctica. They have been found in North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. The wide spread of these fossils shows that Megalodon was not limited to one small region. It was a global predator. Now imagine the ancient Amazon region during that time. Today, the Amazon River is one of the longest and largest rivers in the world. It flows through Brazil and several other South American countries before emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. But millions of years ago, the Amazon basin looked very different. There were times when much of the region was covered by shallow seas. During the Miocene, a vast system known as the Pebbas system existed. It was a mix of wetlands, lakes, rivers, and possibly even connections to the sea. Because sea levels were higher and the continent of South America had not yet fully formed its modern river systems, parts of what is now the Amazon were influenced by marine waters. The Andes Mountains were still rising. The flow of rivers changed over time. At certain periods, ocean water may have reached deep into the continent. This raises an exciting question. Could giant marine predators like Megalodon have entered these waters? To answer that, we must understand how Megalodon lived. It was mainly a marine shark. It preferred warm coastal waters, especially areas rich in prey. Fossil evidence shows that it hunted large marine mammals such as whales, dolphins, and seals. Some fossilized whale bones have been found with large bite marks that match the size and shape of Megalodon teeth. This tells us that it attacked animals much larger than itself. It was not a cautious predator. It was bold, powerful, and at the top of the food chain. If parts of the ancient Amazon basin were connected to the ocean, even temporarily, it is possible that marine animals entered those waters. Smaller sharks, rays, and other sea creatures have been found in fossil deposits in northern South America. Some fossils from the Miocene in the Amazon region show that there were marine influences. However, direct evidence of Megalodon fossils deep inside the Amazon basin is limited and debated. Most Megalodon fossils are found in clearly marine deposits. This suggests that while it may have approached river mouths and coastal lagoons, it likely stayed mostly in ocean waters. Still, the boundaries between ocean and river were not always clear in the past. In a time when sea levels rose and fell, when land shifted and mountains rose, ecosystems blended together. Coastal plains could become shallow seas. Rivers could widen into inland bays. In such a world, it is not impossible that a giant shark swam into brackish or partly fresh waters near what would later become the Amazon River. Even if Megalodon itself did not travel far upriver, other ancient sharks certainly adapted to river systems. Today, we know that some sharks, like bull sharks, can live in both salt and fresh water. They can swim far upstream in rivers. This ability shows that sharks can adapt to changing water conditions. In the distant past, there were also giant freshwater fish living in the Amazon region. Some of them were predators in their own right. One example is the enormous freshwater fish known as arapaima, which still lives in the Amazon today. Its ancient relatives were even larger. The presence of large marine predators near coastal areas would have shaped early ecosystems in powerful ways. When a top predator hunts in a region, it changes the behavior of other animals. Smaller predators become more cautious. Prey species change their migration patterns. Entire food webs adjust. Megalodon, with its massive size and hunger for large prey, would have influenced whale populations and other marine mammals. This, in turn, would affect smaller fish, plankton, and the entire ocean food chain. If marine predators occasionally entered coastal river systems, they could have added pressure to freshwater animals as well. Early crocodilians, giant turtles, and massive fish would have faced new threats. Competition for food could have increased. Some species might have adapted to avoid shallow coastal waters during certain times. Others might have grown larger or developed stronger defenses. The Amazon basin during the Miocene was home to many strange and powerful creatures. There were giant caimans such as Purosaurus, which could grow more than 30 feet long. There was also Purosaurus, a wide-snouted crocodilian that filtered small animals from the water. Large turtles like Stupendomes, which may have reached lengths of more than 10 feet, swam in those waters. These animals formed their own complex ecosystem long before modern humans appeared. Imagine the meeting of such creatures with a giant shark. If Megalodon or other large marine sharks ventured into brackish waters near the coast, they would have encountered crocodilians and giant fish. Battles between such animals would have been fierce. The ocean was already dangerous. Adding river monsters to the mix would make it even more intense. Marine predators influence ecosystems through what scientists call trophic cascades. When a top predator removes or controls certain prey, it prevents any one species from becoming too dominant. For example, if Megalodon reduced whale populations in certain areas, it could indirectly affect the amount of krill or small fish those whales consumed. This ripple effect spreads through the ecosystem. In coastal areas, where rivers meet the sea, these effects could move into freshwater systems as well. As South America continued to rise and shift, the Andes Mountains grew taller. Over millions of years, this changed the direction of rivers. The Amazon River eventually began to flow eastward into the Atlantic Ocean. Before that, parts of the basin may have drained in other directions. The gradual closing of connections between inland waters and the sea would have reduced the chance for large marine predators to enter. Around 3,600,000 years ago, Megalodon disappeared from the fossil record. Scientists are still studying why it went extinct. Climate change likely played a role. The Earth was cooling. Sea levels were dropping. Prey species such as certain whales were changing in size and distribution. Competition from other predators, including the ancestors of modern great white sharks, may have also contributed. Without enough large prey and with changing ocean conditions, Megalodon could not survive. Its extinction would have changed marine ecosystems once again. When a top predator disappears, other animals often expand into the empty space. Smaller sharks and marine mammals may have grown more common. The balance of power in the oceans shifted. In coastal regions near the ancient Amazon, this shift could have influenced which species thrived. Although we do not have clear proof that Megalodon swam deep into the Amazon River, the possibility that marine predators influenced early Amazon ecosystems remains strong. The Amazon was not always a pure freshwater system. It evolved over millions of years. During certain periods, it was shaped by the sea. Marine incursions would have brought saltwater species into contact with freshwater life. This mixing of worlds likely encouraged adaptation, competition, and evolution. Today, when people speak of river monsters in the Amazon, they often think of giant anacondas, massive catfish, or electric eels. These modern animals are impressive, but they are small compared to the giants of the past. The thought that a shark as large as Megalodon once patrolled nearby coastal waters adds a deeper layer to the story of South America's ancient ecosystems. The fossil record continues to grow as new discoveries are made. Each tooth of Megalodon found in South America reminds us of a time when the line between sea and river was not as clear as it is today. The presence of marine fossils in inland regions shows that the Earth's surface is constantly changing. Land rises and falls, seas advance and retreat, ecosystems shift and adapt. In understanding Megalodon and ancient sharks, we learn more than just facts about a giant predator. We see how powerful forces shape life on Earth. We see how climate, geography, and biology are connected. A single species, especially one at the top of the food chain, can influence entire ecosystems. When that species disappears, the impact echoes for millions of years. The story of Megalodon is not just about size and power. It is about balance. It is about change. It is about how ancient seas once touched lands that are now deep forests. It is about how marine predators may have shaped the early history of one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth. And even though the giant shark itself is gone, its teeth remain buried in rock, waiting to be found. Each discovery tells us that the world we see today is only the latest version of a planet that has been reshaped again and again. The Amazon River now flows through dense rainforest, far from the open ocean. But in the distant past, when seas were warmer and boundaries were shifting, the shadow of a massive shark may have passed through waters that would one day become part of the greatest river system on Earth. When scientists uncovered the fossil of a strange ancient fish in South America, they realized they were looking at something both familiar and shocking. It looked like a piranha, the small but sharp-toothed fish that today swims in the rivers of the Amazon. But this was no ordinary river predator. This creature was much larger, much stronger, and far more powerful than the piranhas people fear today. It was later named Mega Piranha paranensis, and the name alone tells the story. Mega means large, and large it certainly was. Modern piranhas, such as the well-known Pygocentrus naturari, usually grow to a length of about 1 foot. They are small enough to fit inside a household aquarium when young, yet their sharp, triangular teeth and powerful jaws have earned them a fierce reputation. They are known for feeding frenzies, where several fish tear into prey at once. Their bite is fast and efficient, slicing through flesh in seconds. Even so, they are not giant monsters. They are small fish that rely on teamwork, speed, and sharp teeth. Mega Piranha was different. It lived millions of years ago during the Miocene epoch, a time when South America was still isolated from other continents. Back then, the Amazon basin did not look exactly like it does today. Vast wetlands, deep rivers, and enormous lakes covered large areas of the continent. The ecosystem was full of unusual animals, including giant crocodiles, massive turtles, strange hoofed mammals, and enormous snakes like Titanoboa cerejonensis. In these waters, Mega Piranha swam as one of the top predators. The fossil that revealed its existence was not a full skeleton. In fact, it was mostly a lower jawbone with several teeth still attached, but that jaw was enough. The teeth were thick, broad, and strong. Unlike modern piranhas, whose teeth are razor-sharp and triangular like tiny knives, Mega Piranha's teeth were somewhat more pointed and conical, yet still sharp along the edges. They looked like a mix between the cutting teeth of a piranha and the crushing teeth of a nut-eating fish. This detail puzzled scientists at first. Most modern piranhas are flesh eaters. They slice meat cleanly. Other fish in the same family, such as Pebbas, are plant eaters with flat teeth designed to crush nuts and seeds. Mega Piranha appeared to combine both styles. Its teeth were not flat like a pacu's, but they were thicker and stronger than those of a normal piranha. This suggested something extraordinary. It may have been able to both slice flesh and crush bone. Imagine a fish nearly 3 feet long, with a powerful body built for sudden bursts of speed. Its jaws snap shut with enormous force. When it bites into prey, it does not simply cut soft tissue. It can break through bone, crack shells, and crush armor. In a river full of tough, heavily protected animals, that ability would have made Mega Piranha extremely dangerous. Scientists studied the shape and size of the jaw and compared it to living piranhas. By examining the muscle attachment points and the thickness of the bone, they estimated how strong its bite might have been. Modern red-bellied piranhas have one of the strongest bites for their body size in the animal kingdom. Pound for pound, their bite is stronger than that of a great white shark. If Mega Piranha had the same muscle design but on a much larger body, its bite force would have been tremendous. Some studies suggest that Mega Piranha may have produced a bite force measured in the hundreds or even over 1,000 pounds of pressure. That would be more than enough to crack bones and tear through large prey. In fact, its bite could have rivaled that of some land predators of its time. For a freshwater fish, that level of power is almost unbelievable. The rivers of Miocene South America were not peaceful places. They were home to giant crocodile relatives like Purosaurus brasiliensis, which could grow to astonishing lengths and had jaws strong enough to crush large mammals. Massive turtles with thick shells drifted through the water. Strange, hoofed mammals wandered near the riverbanks. Large fish, some of them armored with thick scales, swam in the depths. To survive in such a world, an animal needed either armor, size, speed, or powerful weapons. Mega Piranha had its weapon in its mouth. Unlike modern piranhas, which often attack in groups, Mega Piranha may not have needed companions to bring down prey. Its size alone suggests it could hunt larger animals on its own. It may have lurked in murky waters, waiting for movement. When a wounded animal struggled or a smaller fish passed too close, it would have lunged forward in a sudden burst of speed. One powerful bite could cause massive injury. It is important to understand that fear of piranhas today is often exaggerated. While they can be dangerous, attacks on humans are rare and usually happen when the fish are stressed, starving, or defending nests. But Mega Piranha belonged to a different time and scale. If modern piranhas are sharp knives, Mega Piranha was a heavy cleaver. The shape of its teeth gives clues about its feeding behavior. Each tooth was arranged in a zigzag pattern, allowing them to interlock tightly when the jaws closed. This design created a cutting edge like a serrated blade. At the same time, the thickness of the teeth prevented them from breaking under pressure, It was a perfect balance between slicing and crushing. Scientists believe Mega Piranha may have occupied a key role in its ecosystem. Predators help control populations. They remove weak or sick animals, keeping species strong. A powerful predator like Mega Piranha would have influenced which species thrived and which struggled. Its presence may have shaped the behavior of other animals. Prey species might have avoided certain waters. Smaller predators might have stayed away from its hunting grounds. The discovery of Mega Piranha also helps scientists understand how piranhas evolved. Modern piranhas and Pebbas belong to a family of fish called cerassalmids. This group shows a wide range of feeding habits, from strict meat-eating to plant-eating. Mega Piranha appears to sit between these extremes. It suggests that early members of this family experimented with different diets and jaw designs before specializing. Evolution often works by trying many variations. Some succeed and spread, others disappear. Mega Piranha's combination of crushing and slicing teeth may have been one of these experimental designs. It worked well in its time, but as climates changed and ecosystems shifted, the giant fish eventually vanished. Climate change during the late Miocene and afterward altered river systems across South America. The Andes Mountains continued to rise, changing water flow patterns. Wetlands dried or shifted. Species adapted, migrated, or went extinct. Mega Piranha did not survive into the modern age. Its smaller relatives, however, did. They adapted to new conditions and continue to thrive in the Amazon and other rivers today. The idea of a giant flesh-eating fish captures the imagination. Stories of river monsters have existed in many cultures. Indigenous peoples of the Amazon have long respected the dangers of their rivers. While there is no direct evidence that humans ever encountered Mega Piranha, the fossil reminds us that nature once held creatures even more powerful than those we know today. When scientists first described Mega Piranha in the scientific Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology, it attracted wide attention. Media headlines quickly labeled it a giant killer piranha. While such titles can exaggerate, the underlying science is solid. The fossil jaw is real. The teeth are real. The bite force estimates are based on careful comparisons with living fish. The name Mega Piranha paranensis refers to the Paraná region of South America, where the fossil was found. This area, now part of countries such as Argentina and Brazil, once held vast river systems connected to ancient Amazonian waters. The fossil record in this region continues to reveal surprising creatures from the past. One reason Mega Piranha fascinates scientists is that freshwater ecosystems rarely produce very large predatory fish compared to the oceans. Oceans are vast and allow for enormous species like sharks and whales. Rivers are smaller and more limited. Yet South America's river systems were so extensive and rich that they supported giants. Mega Piranha was part of that pattern. To understand its strength, researchers have compared its jaw mechanics with those of living species. By measuring the size of the jawbone and estimating muscle volume, they created models of its bite. These models suggest that even if Mega Piranha was only about 3 feet long, its bite force per body weight may have been among the strongest ever recorded for a vertebrate. That means, pound for pound, it may have been more powerful than many famous predators. Consider how a bite works. The lower jaw acts like a lever. Muscles pull it upward. The longer the lever and the stronger the muscles, the greater the force at the tip. Mega Piranha's jaw was deep and thick, allowing for large muscle attachments. This structure would have generated enormous pressure at the teeth. The prey of Mega Piranha likely included large fish, smaller crocodilians, turtles, and perhaps mammals that ventured into shallow water. It may also have scavenged carcasses, using its crushing power to break bones and access nutritious marrow. In ecosystems where food competition is intense, the ability to eat what others cannot is a major advantage. Modern piranhas often lose teeth and replace them throughout their lives. They have a special arrangement where entire rows of teeth can be replaced at once. It is likely that Mega Piranha had a similar system. This would ensure that damaged teeth were quickly replaced, maintaining the strength of its bite. The fossil record of freshwater fish is often incomplete. Soft tissues decay quickly, and even bones can be destroyed by water movement. That is why a single jawbone can be so important. From that jaw, scientists can reconstruct an entire creature. They can estimate its size, its diet, and even its role in the ecosystem. Mega Piranha reminds us that evolution does not move in a straight line toward bigger or better forms. Sometimes large and powerful species thrive for millions of years and then disappear, while smaller, more flexible species survive. The modern red-bellied piranha is small compared to Mega Piranha, yet it continues to live successfully in the Amazon basin. The story of Mega Piranha also changes how people see piranhas in general. Instead of viewing them only as mindless flesh eaters, we can see them as part of a long evolutionary history filled with experimentation and adaptation. Their sharp teeth and powerful bites are the result of millions of years of natural selection. Today, if you travel along the Amazon River, you might see calm water reflecting the sky. Beneath that surface, small piranhas swim in schools. They are alert, quick, and efficient. They are survivors in a complex ecosystem. But millions of years ago, in similar waters, a much larger shadow might have passed below. That shadow would have belonged to Mega Piranha, a fish whose bite could crush bone and tear through armor. It did not roar like a dinosaur. It did not tower above trees. It did not fly across the sky. Yet in its world, in its rivers, it was a dominant force. Its strength lay in its jaws, in the sudden snap that could end a struggle instantly. It was a reminder that danger does not always come from giants on land. Sometimes it waits silently in water. As scientists continue to explore ancient river deposits in South America, more discoveries may appear. Perhaps a more complete skeleton of Mega Piranha will be found. Perhaps new relatives will be uncovered, revealing even more about this fierce lineage. Each fossil adds another piece to the puzzle of Earth's past. For now, Mega Piranha stands as one of the most impressive freshwater predators ever discovered. Larger than modern piranhas, equipped with bone-crushing teeth and armed with a bite of extraordinary power, it ruled its domain during a time when South America was home to some of the most unusual and formidable creatures in history. And though it vanished millions of years ago, its legacy survives in the smaller piranhas that still patrol today's rivers. In their sharp teeth and quick movements, we can see an echo of that ancient giant. The forests and dense canopies of ancient lands were home to some of the most extraordinary and terrifying creatures ever to roam the earth, and among them, the giant flightless predatory birds stand out as both fascinating and fearsome. These were no ordinary birds. They were enormous, powerful, and equipped with deadly weapons, evolved to become the top hunters in their habitats, especially in places where mammals were rare or nearly absent. Unlike the birds we are familiar with today, these giants could not take to the skies. Their wings were either too small or completely useless for flying, but what they lost in aerial ability, they more than made up for in strength, speed, and ferocity on land. Their very presence reshaped the landscapes they roamed, influencing the lives and behaviors of every other creature around them. In some areas, where large mammalian predators were uncommon or entirely missing, these birds became the ultimate rulers of the ecosystem, the apex hunters, feared by every creature that moved on the ground. These birds were massive, often towering over humans when standing upright. Some species reached heights of up to 10 feet or more, making them nearly impossible to ignore when they appeared on the horizon. Their legs were incredibly strong, built to run at remarkable speeds across open plains, thick forests, and even swampy areas. Their feet ended in sharp, curved claws, sometimes resembling the talons of modern eagles or hawks, but magnified in size and lethality. With a single kick, these claws could tear through flesh, break bones, and disable prey with terrifying efficiency. Their beaks were also formidable tools, thick and hooked, perfect for seizing, slicing, and crushing. Unlike the beaks of herbivorous birds, which are designed for cracking seeds or grazing on leaves, the beaks of these predators were shaped to rip into meat, crush bones, and deliver precise, deadly strikes. Every aspect of their bodies was built for hunting, for dominating the land, and for survival in environments where other predators were few. In terms of behavior, these birds were active hunters, often hunting in open daylight, although some evidence suggests that a few species may have also been nocturnal or crepuscular, hunting at dusk or dawn. Their diet consisted largely of smaller animals, including lizards, small mammals, and other birds, but some of the largest species could even tackle prey as large as juvenile mammals or flightless herbivorous creatures that wandered too close. In areas where mammals were scarce, they filled ecological roles similar to those of lions, wolves, or big cats in other regions. They were opportunistic hunters, highly intelligent for birds, able to track, ambush, and, when necessary, chase down their prey with patience and strategy. Fossil evidence and modern reconstructions suggest that they had powerful muscles along their legs and thighs, which not only allowed rapid bursts of speed, but also supported sudden lunges and kicks, making them nearly unstoppable hunters in their prime. The environments these birds occupied were often isolated or unusual in terms of animal diversity. Many of them thrived in regions where placental mammals, such as large carnivores, were absent or rare. This allowed them to evolve into sizes and roles that mammals would normally dominate. For instance, in ancient Australia, giant flightless birds like the well-known thunderbirds became the top predators after marsupial predators were either small or restricted in number. In South America, similar birds carved out niches in forests, plains, and even near riverbanks where prey animals were abundant, but larger mammalian hunters were scarce. These birds were not passive creatures waiting for food to stumble into their path. They actively patrolled territories, stalking their prey with a combination of strength, patience, and sudden bursts of aggression. They could turn corners with incredible agility for their size, and even in thick underbrush, their long legs allowed them to maneuver quickly, closing distances between themselves and fleeing prey in a matter of seconds. Their senses were also remarkably developed. Fossil studies indicate that many species had exceptionally sharp vision, able to detect movement from great distances. Some had large olfactory bulbs, suggesting they could also rely on a strong sense of smell to track wounded or hidden prey. Hearing, too, may have been acute in some species, allowing them to detect the faintest sounds of animals moving through leaves, grass, or water. The combination of keen senses and powerful bodies made them extraordinarily effective hunters. Some researchers even suggest that certain species hunted in groups or family units, coordinating movements to trap and corner animals too large or too fast for a single bird to subdue alone. In such situations, a bird's intelligence, timing, and aggression worked in perfect harmony, turning a group of these birds into a deadly pack capable of taking down prey far larger than themselves. The flightless nature of these birds did not make them slow. On the contrary, many species could sprint at speeds rivaling or even exceeding modern cheetahs over short distances, especially when chasing prey in open terrain. Their stride was long, powerful, and relentless, with muscles specifically adapted for bursts of speed and sudden precise changes in direction. Coupled with their curved, clawed feet, they were able to deliver kicks or swipes that could disable prey instantly. This combination of speed and lethality made them almost impossible to escape from once they committed to a hunt. Prey species had to rely on camouflage, warning calls, and evasive tactics to survive encounters with these relentless predators. Even animals that were faster in general could fall victim to the strategic patience and sudden explosive attacks of these birds. Reproduction and nurturing were also key parts of their life cycles. Fossilized eggs of some giant predatory birds reveal that they laid eggs that were unusually large for their size, containing enough nutrients to support the rapid growth of their chicks. Hatchlings were vulnerable at first, relying on their parents for protection against other predators, including smaller birds, reptiles, and scavengers. Once fully grown, however, the juveniles became almost indistinguishable in capability from adults, inheriting the hunting skills, speed, and strength that defined their species. In some cases, the young birds may have learned to hunt by following adults, mimicking their movements, and gradually mastering the techniques of stalking, chasing, and striking with deadly precision. The impact of these birds on their ecosystems cannot be overstated. By occupying the role of top predator, they regulated populations of smaller animals, preventing overgrazing or overpopulation that could disrupt the delicate balance of the environment. Their hunting also created opportunities for scavengers, as leftover carcasses fed a wide variety of other creatures, from insects to smaller birds and mammals. In essence, they were both regulators and facilitators within their ecosystems, shaping the natural world around them. The disappearance of such birds in later eras often led to significant changes in ecosystems, highlighting just how influential they were in maintaining ecological stability. In places where these birds vanished, mammals eventually filled the void, and the balance of predator and prey shifted dramatically. Some of the largest and most famous of these birds include species like the terror birds of South America, which belong to the family Phorusrhacidae. These birds, some reaching heights of over 10 feet and weighing as much as 800 pounds, were terrifying to both prey and early human observers. Fossil evidence shows that their skulls were massive, their jaws reinforced with strong bone, and their beaks capable of delivering crushing force. They were relentless hunters, able to chase prey over long distances and strike with sudden, lethal precision. Their size, combined with their speed and intelligence, allowed them to dominate entire regions, shaping the evolutionary path of other animals that had to adapt to survive their presence. In Australia, the giant Dromornithidae, sometimes called mihirungs, represented a similar phenomenon. Some of these species weighed over half a ton and reached heights of nearly 10 feet. Although the details of their hunting methods are less clear than those of the terror birds, they shared similar adaptations for running, striking, and asserting dominance over prey. Fossils suggest strong legs, powerful claws, and massive beaks, all built for survival in a world where large mammals were either scarce or absent. The very size of these birds allowed them to prey on animals that other creatures could not challenge, effectively making them the lords of their domains. Even smaller species of these flightless predators were deadly in their own right. Birds standing just 5 or 6 feet tall were capable of hunting effectively in thick forests or along riverbanks, using stealth and speed to catch prey unawares. Their ability to navigate dense vegetation, combined with sharp eyesight and quick reflexes, made them a constant threat to smaller mammals, reptiles, and even other birds. The diversity in size and hunting style across species meant that almost every niche in the ecosystem could be dominated by a bird predator, from the open plains to dense forest floors, and even near water bodies where fish, amphibians, and small mammals could become part of their diet. The extinction of these giant flightless predators is a story shaped by changing climates, environmental shifts, and, in some regions, the arrival of humans. As the world warmed or cooled, forests expanded or contracted, and new predators arrived. Many species struggled to survive. Some were hunted by humans for food, while others simply could not adapt to rapidly changing environments or competition from newly arriving mammals. Fossil records indicate that these birds disappeared in different eras depending on their location. In South America, terror birds thrived until approximately 1 million years ago, whereas in Australia, some of the largest species survived until around 40,000 years ago, possibly overlapping with the first human inhabitants. Their extinction marked the end of a remarkable chapter in the story of life on Earth, leaving behind only bones, eggs, and the legacy of their incredible dominance as land hunters. Studying these birds today allows scientists and paleontologists to understand not only the creatures themselves, but also the ecosystems they ruled. The fossils reveal patterns of evolution, adaptation, and ecological balance that are otherwise hidden in the distant past. By examining their anatomy, scientists can reconstruct how they hunted, how they moved, and how they interacted with other animals. Advanced technologies, including CT scanning, biomechanical modeling, and comparative anatomy, have allowed researchers to recreate accurate models of these predators, showing how they could run at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, strike with deadly precision, and maintain stamina over long chases. The insights gained from these studies also shed light on the pressures that shape apex predators and the crucial roles they play in maintaining ecological harmony. Beyond their physical attributes, these birds inspire awe and fascination due to their sheer audacity in occupying niches that mammals usually dominate. They demonstrate that evolution can take radically different paths depending on the environment and available opportunities. In a world without many large mammalian predators, birds could rise to terrifying heights, become the ultimate hunters, and dominate entire landscapes. They are living proof of nature's adaptability and the remarkable diversity of life that has existed on our planet. Their story reminds us that size, strength, intelligence, and adaptability are the keys to survival in the complex web of life, and that even creatures we think of as delicate or fragile, like birds, can evolve into apex predators capable of ruling entire ecosystems. The presence of these birds also influenced the evolution of other species. Prey animals developed new strategies to evade them, from heightened senses and camouflage to social behaviors like herding or nesting in inaccessible places. Some animals evolve speed, agility, or defensive structures, like armor or spikes, in direct response to the hunting pressure imposed by these giant birds. This predator-prey dynamic drove evolutionary innovation, creating a natural arms race that shaped the appearance, behavior, and survival strategies of countless species. In this sense, the flightless predatory birds were not just hunters, they were architects of evolution, guiding the development of life around them through their relentless pursuit of survival. Even though they are long extinct, the memory of these predators continues to captivate scientists, historians, and enthusiasts. Their enormous size, incredible speed, and hunting prowess make them unforgettable in the story of life on Earth. They demonstrate the potential for birds to evolve in astonishing ways, adapting to dominate niches that mammals often fill in other parts of the world. Through their fossils, tracks, and preserved remains, they speak across millions of years, telling us about the power, elegance, and danger of life in prehistoric times. Every fossil bone, every eggshell, every footprint preserved in stone carries a story of survival, hunting, and dominance. A reminder that the land was once ruled not only by mammals, reptiles, or humans, but also by these magnificent and deadly giants of the sky-bound lineage, who chose to conquer the ground instead. The giant flightless predatory birds of the ancient world were more than just creatures of size and strength. They were extraordinary examples of evolution's creativity and adaptability. They were fast, powerful, and intelligent hunters, perfectly suited to fill the void left by absent mammalian predators. In every corner of the lands they inhabited, from dense forests to open plains, they imposed their rule, shaping ecosystems, influencing prey behavior, and leaving an indelible mark on the natural history of Earth. Venomous creatures roamed the Earth in ways that are almost impossible to imagine today. Among them were ancient spiders, snakes, insects, and amphibians, each more terrifying than the next. Some of these creatures were enormous compared to their modern relatives, while others carried poisons far more powerful than anything we know today. The forests, swamps, and rivers of the time were alive with danger, a constant struggle for survival between predator and prey. No corner of the land was truly safe, as venom could be hidden in fangs, stingers, or even in the touch of a creature as small as a crawling insect. Spiders, for example, had reached astonishing sizes in ancient eras. One group, related to modern tarantulas, included species with leg spans reaching nearly 1 foot across. Their bodies were thick and muscular, their legs strong enough to run with surprising speed. Unlike the web-spinning spiders many are familiar with today, these hunters preferred to stalk their prey. Fossilized remains show that their fangs were long and curved, able to pierce the tough shells of beetles, armored insects, and even the early amphibians that ventured too close. The venom inside their fangs was likely incredibly potent. Scientists studying these fossils suggest it could have immobilized prey almost instantly, a necessary adaptation in a world where even small animals were capable of biting back or escaping with great skill. Some spiders may have been as long as a modern human's forearm and built like small tanks. The predators they hunted included insects that were themselves enormous by today's standards. Dragonflies with wingspans of nearly 3 feet could swoop down from the treetops and snatch smaller creatures in midair. The giant spiders needed venom that was fast-acting to catch such prey, as struggling insects could quickly escape if the bite was slow or weak. Snakes were another group that reached extraordinary proportions. Early snakes, appearing around 150 million years ago, were slender yet strong, and some grew to lengths comparable to a small bus. These serpents were not simply constrictors. Many carried venom that could paralyze or kill quickly. Unlike many snakes today, which rely on camouflage and ambush, these ancient snakes were active hunters, using their venom to subdue creatures larger than themselves. Fossils suggest that some species may have been able to strike with incredible speed, injecting venom deep into their prey's tissues. The potency of snake venom during these periods was likely far higher than that of modern species. Today's cobras, vipers, and mambas produce venom powerful enough to kill humans, yet prehistoric snakes might have evolved even deadlier formulas to cope with a world where both predators and prey were enormous and aggressive. Their venom could include neurotoxins that affected the nervous system, causing paralysis, as well as hemotoxins that attacked the blood and tissues, making it impossible for victims to escape. Evidence from fossilized bite marks on bones suggests that these snakes could hunt not only other reptiles, but also early mammals and amphibians, striking efficiently before their victims had a chance to flee. Insects during these eras were a terrifying sight as well. Dragonflies, cockroaches, beetles, and other species often reached sizes unimaginable today. Dragonflies, for example, could grow to wingspans of nearly 3 feet, making them deadly aerial predators. Some beetles and cockroaches reached lengths of over 6 inches, armored and resilient, equipped with toxic defenses. Certain prehistoric insects carried venom through stingers or biting mouthparts, using it to subdue prey or defend against predators. Unlike the small, often harmless insects we see now, these ancient species were capable of inflicting pain or even death, and their resilience made them difficult targets for other hunters. Among amphibians, the giants of prehistoric swamps and rivers were particularly impressive. Some early salamander-like creatures grew to lengths of 10 feet or more, far exceeding any modern salamander or newt. Their skin secreted toxins that could make predators think twice before attacking. These toxins may have included substances capable of causing severe pain, paralysis, or internal bleeding in other animals. Some amphibians were armored with bony plates, making it nearly impossible for smaller predators to bite them without being poisoned themselves. Their hunting strategies combined strength, venom, and cunning, allowing them to dominate their habitats. One group of ancient amphibians, related to modern frogs and toads, developed extraordinary venom in addition to their size. Some species had glands capable of secreting enough poison to kill several small predators at once. They could ambush prey in rivers or swamps, using camouflage to remain hidden until the last moment. The combination of their size, strength, and chemical defenses made them among the most formidable hunters of their time. Venom in these ancient creatures was not merely a tool for hunting, it was also crucial for defense. Many predators, from small mammals to giant reptiles, were constantly on the lookout for easy prey. Animals that could inject venom or release toxins had a higher chance of survival. Venom evolved not only to kill quickly, but also to deter attacks, leaving predators with painful, often dangerous consequences if they made a mistake. Insects, spiders, and amphibians alike used venom strategically, striking only when necessary but capable of delivering effects far beyond what modern humans might expect. The sheer diversity of venomous creatures in prehistoric ecosystems was staggering. Spiders of different families developed unique toxins for specific prey. Some targeted the nervous systems of insects, paralyzing them almost instantly, while others used hemotoxins to weaken larger vertebrates. Snakes evolved venom to tackle reptiles, amphibians, and mammals, combining speed with chemical potency. Even insects, often overlooked as simple creatures, carried a wide range of chemical weapons. Some beetles released toxins that burned the skin, while others had stingers that could inject venom capable of causing severe pain or even death in small animals. Ecological interactions were heavily influenced by these venomous capabilities. Predators had to be cautious, often learning through painful experience which creatures were too dangerous to attack. Prey species evolved defenses, sometimes developing thicker shells, faster reflexes, or their own chemical defenses. This evolutionary arms race drove the development of ever more sophisticated venom as creatures competed to survive in habitats filled with giants. A single bite could determine the fate of a small predator or prey, and venom became a decisive factor in survival. Some of the most fascinating examples of venomous evolution appear in fossilized arthropods. Scorpions, for instance, reached sizes nearly double what we see today, with stingers thick enough to penetrate the exoskeletons of other large arthropods. Their venom glands were likely capable of producing potent mixtures, combining paralyzing agents with compounds that caused long-term pain or tissue damage. Fossils of these scorpions indicate that their hunting strategies involved both brute strength and chemical warfare, making them efficient predators in both forest floors and semi-aquatic environments. Centipedes and millipedes also displayed remarkable adaptations. Giant centipedes, some over 3 feet long, used venom to immobilize prey rapidly. Their multiple legs allowed them to move swiftly, while their sharp mouthparts delivered venom deep into their victims. Millipedes, although less aggressive, sometimes secreted toxins capable of causing skin irritation or even more severe effects in small animals. Together, these multi-legged hunters added another layer of danger to prehistoric habitats, ensuring that survival required both caution and skill. The evolution of venom was not limited to predation. It also played a role in reproductive strategies and territorial defense. Some species developed chemical signals in their venom, allowing them to mark territory or deter rivals. Certain spiders and insects would inject venom into competitors during mating disputes or to claim hunting grounds. Amphibians with skin toxins could ward off larger predators and protect eggs in dangerous environments. In this way, venom became a tool not only for killing, but also for communication and survival within complex ecosystems. The interaction between venomous creatures and early vertebrates, including the first mammals, reptiles, and birds, shaped entire ecosystems. Animals learned to recognize danger, avoid certain habitats, and develop defensive behaviors. Predators that were themselves venomous gained an advantage, but those that could tolerate or resist venom also found opportunities. Over millions of years, this dynamic influenced evolution, creating a world where chemical warfare was as important as strength, speed, or camouflage. Fossil evidence shows that some of the largest venomous snakes, such as species related to the modern king cobra, could reach lengths of 20 to 30 feet. Their skulls were heavily reinforced to withstand struggles with prey, and their fangs were long and curved, allowing deep venom injection. These snakes dominated riverbanks and forest floors, ambushing creatures from birds and mammals to amphibians and other reptiles. A single strike could incapacitate an animal in seconds, ensuring that even the swiftest prey had little chance of escape. Among spiders, the development of venom was intertwined with their hunting techniques. Ambush predators relied on highly concentrated venom to stop prey instantly, while web builders used venom not only to kill, but to digest insects more efficiently. Fossilized webs indicate that some species had trap structures capable of capturing large insects, which were then paralyzed with venom before being consumed. The combination of chemical potency and mechanical skill made these spiders exceptionally successful predators. Insects continued to amaze with their diversity and venomous adaptations. Certain ants, wasps, and bees developed social strategies enhanced by venom. They could work together to attack much larger animals, injecting venom that caused pain, confusion, and sometimes death. Their stingers, although small, delivered chemicals far stronger than one might expect, ensuring that even relatively tiny creatures could defend colonies or capture prey. These social insects demonstrated that venom was not merely an individual advantage, but could be used collectively to influence entire environments. Amphibians, too, developed remarkable venom systems. Some prehistoric frogs and toads had glands capable of producing deadly secretions that could incapacitate or kill. These chemicals were used both for defense and for hunting, allowing the amphibians to capture prey that would otherwise be too fast or dangerous. Their skin secretions could be so potent that even touching the animals caused irritation, pain, or more serious effects in predators. Over time, these amphibians evolved a delicate balance, using venom strategically rather than indiscriminately, ensuring maximum effect with minimal energy expenditure. Venomous adaptations extended into the water as well. Ancient fish and aquatic reptiles developed spines, barbs, and stingers coated with toxins. Rays, for example, had venomous spines along their tails capable of delivering painful wounds to predators and competitors. Certain primitive sharks may have evolved venomous teeth or jaws, making them even more dangerous in hunting or defending territories. Aquatic insects sometimes carried venom in their mouthparts, allowing them to paralyze smaller prey in the water column. This constant chemical battle extended throughout rivers, lakes, and coastal environments, shaping behavior and survival strategies. The chemical composition of ancient venoms was likely complex and highly variable. Modern science has revealed that venom can contain hundreds of different compounds, each targeting specific systems in prey or predators. In prehistoric creatures, this complexity may have been even greater. Some venoms could paralyze nerves, others could destroy tissues, and some might have caused prolonged pain to prevent repeated attacks. Evolution favored those individuals who could produce the most effective combinations, driving an unseen arms race across species. Over millions of years, these venomous adaptations influenced ecosystems in profound ways. Animals learned to respect dangerous creatures, developing camouflage, avoidance strategies, or even immunity. Predators evolved to cope with venomous prey, while prey species adapted to recognize and escape from venomous threats. Forests, swamps, deserts, and rivers became theaters of constant chemical warfare, where venom was as decisive as size, strength, or speed. Each bite, sting, or touch could alter survival, reproduction, and evolution in countless ways. Even the smallest venomous creatures played crucial roles. Tiny insects with stingers influenced the survival of larger animals, while spiders controlled insect populations with venomous efficiency. Amphibians and snakes dominated their niches, shaping the behavior of countless other species. Fossil records demonstrate that these interactions were central to ecosystem balance, showing that venom was more than a weapon. It was a key factor in maintaining the delicate web of life. Some ancient spiders evolved techniques remarkably sophisticated, combining stealth, venom, and even cooperative hunting in rare instances. Fossils suggest that some large species may have used venom to immobilize prey while waiting for ambush partners or to protect eggs. Spiders of certain families produced venom so fast-acting that insects would not struggle, ensuring energy was conserved. Similarly, ancient scorpions, centipedes, and even some insects developed venom delivery systems optimized for speed and accuracy, striking efficiently to maximize effect while minimizing risk. Snakes evolved similarly advanced venom mechanisms. Some species had hollow fangs connected to glands capable of injecting venom deep into the prey's body with precision. These adaptations made hunting safer and more effective, as snakes could subdue dangerous or fast-moving animals without engaging in risky physical combat. Over time, selection favored venom that was not only potent but could act in multiple ways, paralyzing, destroying tissues, and sometimes affecting the cardiovascular system. Amphibians, especially large frogs and salamanders, used venom in ways less obvious but equally effective. Skin toxins served as deterrents against predators and as traps for curious animals that ventured too close. Their venom was sometimes combined with physical defenses, such as spikes or rough skin, making them nearly untouchable. Some amphibians also employed venom in reproductive strategies, protecting eggs in water or on land from fish, insects, and other predators. Insects perfected venom as both offense and defense. Social species like ants, bees, and wasps could coordinate attacks, injecting venom into intruders with remarkable precision. Solitary insects, such as certain predatory beetles, delivered venom through bites or stingers to subdue prey far larger than themselves. The chemical diversity of these venoms, combined with strategic use, made insects a significant force despite their small size. Evolution shaped these systems to maximize efficiency, ensuring that even minor species could influence survival outcomes in complex ecosystems. Even prehistoric birds, emerging around 150 million years ago, may have encountered venomous threats daily. Fossilized evidence suggests that small theropod birds navigated a world full of snakes, spiders, and insects capable of delivering venomous bites or stings. Their survival depended on keen eyesight, agility, and instinctive avoidance of venomous creatures. Predatory birds that hunted venomous prey needed careful strategies to avoid being poisoned, while scavengers learned which species could be approached safely. Venomous adaptations shaped not only individual survival, but the evolutionary trajectory of entire lineages. Animals that developed immunity or resistance to venom gained advantages over those that did not. Some species evolved to mimic venomous creatures, using the threat of poison to deter predators without actually producing venom. Others specialized in hunting venomous prey, tolerating or neutralizing the chemical defenses of their victims. This coevolution created a dynamic system where venom influenced not only predator-prey interactions, but also broader patterns of biodiversity and ecosystem structure. Over millions of years, some venomous lineages disappeared while others flourished. Environmental changes, including shifts in climate, vegetation, and water systems, altered habitats and prey availability. Venomous animals adapted in remarkable ways, sometimes evolving smaller size, different hunting strategies, or new chemical defenses. Yet the essence of venom as a survival tool remained constant. In every era, creatures capable of delivering or resisting venom occupied critical ecological roles, influencing the behavior, evolution, and survival of countless species around them. By examining fossils, scientists gain insights into this hidden world of chemical warfare, Impressions of spider bodies, snake skulls, insect exoskeletons, and amphibian bones reveal structures associated with venom delivery. The length and curvature of fangs, the shape of stingers, and the placement of glands all tell stories of creatures adapted to life in a dangerous, chemically armed world. Analysis of fossilized stomach contents and bite marks provides clues about how venom was used, which species were preyed upon, and how ecosystems functioned. Chemical analysis of modern descendants, combined with fossil evidence, allows researchers to reconstruct the venom systems of ancient animals. Comparing the fangs of prehistoric spiders to those of modern tarantulas, or examining the stingers of giant scorpions, reveals likely venom potency and prey strategies. These studies suggest that prehistoric venoms could be faster acting, more complex, and more potent than most present-day examples. Animals of all sizes, from insects to amphibians to giant snakes, developed chemicals capable of producing rapid immobilization, long-term pain, or tissue destruction. The diversity of venomous adaptations also shows how evolution experimented with solutions to similar problems. Spiders, snakes, insects, and amphibians all evolved independently to produce venom, yet each lineage developed unique mechanisms. Spiders injected venom with hollow fangs, snakes with long curved fangs, insects with stingers or biting mouthparts, and amphibians through glands in their skin. Despite differences, the outcome was similar, an effective tool for capturing prey, deterring predators, and ensuring survival in a dangerous, competitive world. Even creatures often thought harmless today had deadly ancestors. Many modern amphibians, insects, and spiders retain small amounts of venom, echoing the past where potency and size made them formidable. Studying ancient venomous creatures highlights how evolutionary pressures shaped both predators and prey, emphasizing the importance of chemical warfare alongside physical strength, speed, and camouflage. Fossils, preserved in stone and amber, provide glimpses into these dangerous worlds, showing creatures designed not only to survive, but to dominate their habitats through a combination of size, cunning, and venomous skill. The legacy of ancient venomous creatures is evident in modern species. Tarantulas, scorpions, centipedes, snakes, and frogs carry echoes of these ancient strategies. Venom remains a key factor in their survival, a chemical weapon honed over millions of years. Understanding the size, potency, and hunting strategies of prehistoric venomous animals reveals a world where danger was everywhere, and survival depended on skill, caution, and the deadly power of venom. By reconstructing these worlds from fossils, impressions, and chemical traces, scientists continue to uncover the unimaginable scale and potency of ancient venomous life. Creatures that might have seemed monstrous in size, venomous in effect, and relentless in their hunting strategies shaped ecosystems, influenced evolution, and dominated every corner of land and water. They were creatures of both beauty and terror, perfectly adapted to a world in which only the clever, the cautious, and the chemically armed could survive. Spiders that once spanned nearly 1 foot, snakes as long as a small bus, insects that could pierce skin with deadly toxins, and amphibians capable of releasing chemical secrets from their skin all demonstrate that life evolved to survive through force, speed, and venom. Each adaptation tells a story of survival, evolution, and the raw power of chemical defense. Ancient ecosystems were alive with venom, shaping every interaction, every battle, and every survival story in ways modern humans are only beginning to understand. Forests of giants were vast, unbroken expanses of towering trees and thick vegetation, stretching endlessly in every direction. The trees themselves reached heights of over 300 feet, their thick trunks forming enormous columns that rose straight into the sky. Many trunks measured 10 to 20 feet across, wide enough for small creatures to live inside hollows within them. Their bark was rough and cracked, often covered with moss, fungi, and climbing plants that wrapped around the trunks like living ropes. Branches extended outward, intertwining with neighboring trees, creating a dense network of leaves and limbs that blocked almost all sunlight from reaching the forest floor. Beneath this canopy, the forest floor was dark and crowded. Fallen leaves, rotting wood, and dense undergrowth formed a thick carpet that muffled sound and slowed movement. Ferns, shrubs, and smaller trees grew in every available space, their roots tangled with vines and roots of larger trees. Lianas twisted from one tree to another, creating natural barriers that made movement slow and difficult. Even the wind struggled to reach the lower levels, leaving the air heavy, damp, and warm. Moisture hung in the air, giving it a thick, almost tangible quality, while the smell of decaying plants mixed with fresh growth in a strong, earthy scent that filled every breath. The density of the vegetation made survival a constant challenge for animals living in these forests. Prey animals faced nearly impossible odds when trying to escape predators. Paths through the thick ferns and tangled vines were narrow and winding. Every step could become entangled in roots, or be blocked by fallen logs, thorny plants, or thick underbrush. Predators used this to their advantage, slipping silently through shadows and using the heavy vegetation as cover. For herbivores, moving quickly was nearly impossible. Running meant pushing through walls of leaves and branches that slowed speed and created noise. Even strong animals risked injury from sharp branches, twisted roots, and hidden obstacles. Every moment of movement required constant attention to avoid getting trapped or hurt. Some of the trees produced wide, fan-shaped leaves that could stretch over 3 or 4 feet in length, collecting every drop of sunlight possible for photosynthesis. Others had needle-like leaves that created thick layers across branches, forming a dense green roof above. Many of the trees dropped enormous quantities of leaves year-round, creating a continuous layer of decomposing plant matter that enriched the soil, but also made walking hazardous. Hidden beneath this layer were roots that snaked unpredictably across the ground, sometimes exposed, sometimes just beneath the surface. Stepping in the wrong place could lead to a twisted ankle or a sudden fall. This made hunting, foraging, and even simple travel slow and dangerous. Water was abundant in these forests, but it added to the challenges. Rivers and streams wove through the dense plant growth, their courses difficult to follow. Flooded areas and muddy ground trapped the feet of animals, while hidden pools could lead to accidental drowning for those unfamiliar with the terrain. Rainfall was frequent, heavy, and relentless. Each downpour increased the humidity, softened the ground, and caused smaller streams to swell into rivers. This constant moisture encouraged the growth of fungi, mosses, and algae, which coated rocks and fallen logs, making every surface slippery. Survival required not only strength, but skill, knowledge, and constant vigilance. The forest ecosystem was complex and layered. In the highest branches, birds and flying reptiles hunted insects, laid eggs, and rested safely above the reach of most predators. Below them, small mammals and insects moved through the trees, feeding on leaves, fruits, and seeds. On the forest floor, large herbivores struggled to find enough edible material among the dense undergrowth. Some ate leaves stripped from low-hanging branches, while others dug through the thick carpet of debris to reach roots and fungi. Predators of all sizes stalked silently, their movements masked by the noise of falling leaves and dripping water. The forest created a constant struggle between predator and prey, each depending on the dense vegetation to survive. Vines were one of the most important features of these forests. They grew quickly and thickly, wrapping around trees, connecting trunks, and forming natural bridges that could be used by animals capable of climbing. For prey animals, vines were both a hazard and a tool. Getting tangled could prevent escape, but climbing them offered a temporary refuge above ground. Predators used the same vines to move silently and attack from unexpected angles. Lianas, in particular, were strong enough to hold the weight of large animals, creating an invisible network of pathways that existed above and below, weaving the entire forest into a living, moving structure. Certain trees dominated the landscape. Conifers with towering, straight trunks created massive vertical spaces, while cycads and ferns filled the lower levels with dense leaves. Some species formed pure groves, their close growth forming almost solid walls of bark and leaf. These groves were difficult for even the largest animals to penetrate, and the lack of visibility made surprise attacks from predators frequent. In these areas, silence was rare. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, could signal the presence of danger, forcing animals to remain alert at all times. Survival depended not only on speed and strength, but also on the ability to detect threats in a space where vision was limited. In some places, sunlight reached the forest floor only in small patches. These areas, called clearings, were rare and often surrounded by the densest growth. Plants in these openings thrived, producing flowers, fruits, and seeds in abundance. Animals were attracted to clearings for food and light, but entering them was dangerous. Predators could use the shadows at the edges to hide and ambush unsuspecting prey. Many animals became specialized for life in these gaps, learning to detect movement quickly and escape into the surrounding thickets when threatened. Fallen trees were both obstacles and shelters. Their enormous trunks could block entire paths, forcing animals to climb over, go around, or find alternative routes. Hollowed-out sections became temporary homes for smaller animals, insects, and reptiles. As the wood decayed, it attracted fungi, insects, and bacteria, which in turn fed larger creatures. Fallen trees could also create new gaps in the canopy, allowing sunlight to reach the floor and change the growth patterns of nearby plants. Life in the forest was a continuous cycle of growth, death, and renewal, with each stage affecting the others. The sheer size of the plants created a unique climate within the forest. The canopy trapped humidity, creating a thick, warm, and often foggy atmosphere. Rainfall drenched every leaf, branch, and root, but the dense growth prevented water from immediately flowing away, forming puddles, streams, and small ponds throughout the forest. This environment encouraged the rapid growth of mosses, ferns, and fungi, which covered every available surface. For animals, this meant constant moisture and a slippery, uneven terrain, making movement slow and careful. Some predators in these forests were extraordinary in their adaptations. Large reptiles, carnivorous mammals, and predatory birds had developed exceptional senses for detecting prey in near darkness. Sharp claws, strong jaws, and keen eyesight allowed them to hunt successfully in an environment where escape routes were limited. Prey species were equally specialized. Many had strong legs for jumping over roots and fallen branches, camouflaged fur or scales to blend into shadows, and sharp senses to detect danger before it became a threat. Survival depended on the constant interaction between predator and prey, each evolving strategies to outwit the other. The density of the vegetation made escape almost impossible in many areas. A small animal running from a predator could easily become trapped in vines, dense shrubs, or narrow passages between trees. Even large animals could be slowed by fallen logs, tangled roots, or mud, giving predators a significant advantage. The forest forced movement to follow specific paths, often leading prey directly into danger. Animals that tried to move blindly risked injury or death, while those that carefully navigated the obstacles had a higher chance of survival. Life in the forest was a test of endurance, intelligence, and constant alertness. Seeds and fruits played a major role in sustaining the forest's animal population. Trees and plants produced enormous quantities of seeds, nuts, and fruits, some of which were so large that they could injure small animals if they fell from great heights. Many animals relied on these food sources for survival, learning to forage carefully and store food when possible. Fruit-eating animals, in turn, helped spread seeds throughout the forest, allowing plants to colonize new areas and maintain the dense, tangled growth that defined the environment. Over millions of years, the forests of giants shaped life in every direction. Animals, plants, and microorganisms adapted to the challenges of thick vegetation, limited sunlight, and constant moisture. Predators developed stealth and strength, while prey species perfected speed, camouflage, and agility. Every plant contributed to the complexity of the ecosystem, from massive trees creating shelter and shade to small ferns filling in empty spaces. The forest was not just a collection of plants, but a living, breathing environment where every organism depended on another for survival. The interaction between plants and animals created a constant cycle of growth and decay. Trees grew tall, competed for sunlight, and eventually died, falling to create new opportunities for smaller plants. Fungi and bacteria decomposed fallen leaves and wood, enriching the soil and providing nutrients for the next generation of growth. Animals contributed to this cycle by spreading seeds, consuming plant material, and shaping the landscape through their movement. The forest was a dynamic system, changing continuously, yet remaining dense and nearly impenetrable for thousands of years. Rivers and streams carved paths through the dense forests, creating pockets of life that differed from the surrounding areas. Aquatic plants grew along the banks, providing shelter and food for fish, amphibians, and insects. Animals relied on these water sources, often traveling long distances through the thick vegetation to reach them. The combination of water, dense growth, and constant humidity created a unique microclimate where life flourished in abundance, but danger was never far away. Predators lurked near water sources, waiting for prey to drink or cross, while prey animals developed careful routines to minimize risk. Lightning and fire occasionally altered the landscape. While rain was frequent, thunderstorms could bring sudden strikes that ignited parts of the forest. Fires were rare but could change the growth patterns dramatically, opening gaps in the canopy and allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor. These events created temporary advantages for some species while devastating others. The forest constantly responded to these changes, adjusting growth, distribution, and behavior in an endless cycle of adaptation. The variety of plant life in the forest was staggering. Some trees bore seeds enclosed in hard shells, protected from predators until they were ready to grow. Others had soft, fleshy fruits that attracted animals to carry seeds elsewhere. Climbing plants grew toward light, twisting around their neighbors, while ground cover plants spread across soil, filling gaps and stabilizing the terrain. Ferns, mosses, and fungi thrived in the dark, damp undergrowth, feeding on decaying material and supporting a complex web of insects and small animals. Every layer of the forest contributed to its density and complexity, leaving few empty spaces. Animal life adapted in remarkable ways to navigate the nearly impossible terrain. Birds and flying reptiles occupied the canopy and mid-levels, feeding on insects, fruits, and small vertebrates. Small mammals scurried along branches, moved through tunnels under roots, and hid in hollows for protection. Larger herbivores adapted to slow, careful movement, learning to push through obstacles without getting trapped. Predators, in turn, developed strategies to take advantage of these limitations, waiting silently in shadows or attacking quickly to prevent escape. The forests of giants were among the most dangerous ecosystems that ever existed. The combination of towering trees, dense undergrowth, tangled vines, and constant moisture created a landscape where every movement carried risk. Prey animals had few options for escape, while predators could use the environment to their advantage. Survival required strength, agility, intelligence, and knowledge of the forest's hidden dangers. Every day, life in the forest was a careful balance between finding food, avoiding predators, and navigating a maze of living obstacles. Even in areas where sunlight managed to penetrate, growth was dense. The rare clearings were filled with thick grasses, flowering plants, and young trees competing for space and light. These openings attracted animals, but entering them exposed them to danger from predators hiding in the surrounding thickets. Life was a constant negotiation between safety and necessity, and only the most adaptable species thrived over long periods. The forests of giants shaped not only the lives of the creatures within them, but also the evolution of species over millions of years. Animals developed physical and behavioral adaptations to survive the dense vegetation, from long limbs for climbing to heightened senses for detecting danger. Plants evolved strategies to dominate the canopy, spread seeds effectively, and survive in low-light conditions. The environment demanded resilience, ingenuity, and constant alertness from every living being. Dense fogs often settled in the valleys between giant trees, making visibility even worse. Moisture collected on leaves and branches, dripping unpredictably onto the forest floor. This created pools of water, muddy patches, and slippery surfaces, all of which increased the difficulty of movement. Animals that attempted to move quickly risked slipping or becoming trapped, making escape from predators nearly impossible. Even the strongest and fastest creatures had to navigate carefully to survive. The interaction between predators and prey in these forests created a delicate balance. Predators could not afford to waste energy in failed hunts, and prey species had to avoid becoming trapped or cornered. This constant struggle drove evolution, shaping behaviors, body structures, and strategies over countless generations. Forests of giants were arenas of survival, where every step, jump, and movement could mean life or death. Vast roots extended across the forest floor, forming a web that supported the massive trees above. These roots created obstacles, tunnels, and hiding places for smaller creatures. They could trip or slow animals unfamiliar with the terrain, and they channeled rainwater into natural streams and puddles. The combination of roots, fallen trees, vines, and dense undergrowth made direct paths rare, forcing animals to adapt to a constantly changing and challenging environment. Even the sounds of the forest contributed to its dangers. Constant dripping water, rustling leaves, snapping branches, and the calls of animals created a cacophony that could mask the approach of predators. Prey species relied on acute hearing and careful observation to detect threats, while predators used the ambient noise to move stealthily. Every sound had meaning, and failure to interpret it correctly could lead to capture or injury. Life in these forests required constant vigilance. Predators, prey, and even scavengers had to understand the environment intimately. Knowing the location of vines, roots, water sources, and clearings could mean the difference between survival and death. The forest was not passive. It shaped behavior, dictated movement, and influenced evolution in profound ways. Every organism became a product of the dense, dangerous ecosystem surrounding it. Over long periods, the forests themselves changed continuously. Trees died and fell, new saplings grew, rivers shifted, and weather patterns altered the moisture and light availability. Despite these changes, the forests remained dense, tangled, and overwhelmingly difficult to navigate. The ecosystem maintained its complexity and danger, ensuring that only the most adaptable and cautious species could survive and thrive. Predators took advantage of every feature in the forests to hunt effectively. Large cats, reptiles, and predatory birds used shadows, dense undergrowth, and tangled vines to ambush prey. Their attacks were often precise, exploiting the obstacles that slowed escaping animals. Prey species, in turn, evolved strategies for hiding, climbing, and using the terrain to evade capture. The constant interaction between predator and prey maintained the delicate balance that allowed life to persist despite the dangers of the environment. The plants themselves formed barriers that limited movement. Some species had spines, thorns, or sticky surfaces that could trap or injure animals. Dense clusters of shrubs, ferns, and small trees created narrow corridors that animals were forced to follow, guiding prey into predictable paths where predators could wait. Fallen logs and thick root networks formed natural gates and traps, further complicating movement. Navigating the forests required intelligence, strength, and careful attention to every detail. Life in the forests of giants was harsh, demanding, and constant. Every organism, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, depended on the dense, layered ecosystem. The forests dictated how species moved, fed, reproduced, and interacted. Survival was a combination of skill, adaptation, and resilience, and the dense vegetation ensured that no creature could ignore the environment in which it lived. The forest was a living, breathing entity, shaping life across millions of years and maintaining a level of danger and complexity unmatched by almost any other ecosystem in Earth's history. Trees and plants competed as fiercely as animals did. Saplings struggled to grow in the shadows of towering giants, while vines sought sunlight by climbing higher than their neighbors. Some trees released chemicals into the soil to inhibit the growth of nearby plants, while others relied on animals to carry seeds far from the parent tree. The interactions between plants created patterns of growth, decay, and renewal, continually changing the forest landscape while maintaining its dense, tangled nature. Prey animals developed remarkable strategies for moving unseen. Camouflage was essential, with fur, scales, or feathers blending perfectly into the shadows, fallen leaves, and moss-covered trunks. Movement had to be slow and deliberate in many cases, with every step carefully considered. Quick bursts of speed were used sparingly, often only when absolutely necessary, because the dense undergrowth could quickly turn a sprint into a trap. Even large herbivores relied on understanding the terrain to avoid injury and predation. Predators evolved alongside their prey, honing their senses to detect movement, sound, and scent within the dense forest. Hunting required patience, strategy, and often cooperation among individuals. Predators learned to exploit every feature of the environment, from shadowed thickets to narrow corridors formed by tangled vegetation. Ambush attacks were common, with success often determined by the predator's ability to move silently, wait for the right moment, and strike with precision. The forests of giants were ecosystems of unmatched complexity. Every tree, vine, root, and fallen log contributed to a network of life in which animals and plants depended on one another. Water, sunlight, soil nutrients, and space were constantly contested. Predators and prey, large and small, all interacted with the vegetation in ways that shaped evolution and behavior. Life was continuous, dynamic, and often dangerous, with survival requiring constant adaptation to an environment that was both generous in resources and unforgiving in obstacles. Even the smallest details mattered. A hidden vine could slow an animal enough for a predator to strike. A patch of moss could conceal a hole, leading to injury. A sudden drop in terrain could trap a small mammal. Every element of the forest was interconnected, creating an environment in which nothing existed in isolation. Animals learned to read the terrain, sense danger, and adapt behavior to the constantly shifting conditions. Plants influenced movement, provided shelter, and dictated feeding patterns, creating a living system in which every organism played a role. Seasons influenced the density and behavior of the forest. During wetter periods, undergrowth became even thicker, streams swelled, and the forest floor grew more treacherous. In drier times, some areas dried enough to allow easier movement, but the threat of predators remained constant. Life had to adjust to changing conditions, balancing feeding and safety at all times. Many animals timed their movements based on light, water, and predator activity. Some species were more active during dawn and dusk, taking advantage of the dim light to move through the dense vegetation without being easily spotted. Others relied on nightfall, using darkness and shadows to navigate and hunt. Even small changes in weather or the density of fog could dramatically alter visibility, sound, and scent, influencing how prey and predators interacted. Survival required constant observation, learning, and adaptation. The thick vegetation also created vertical layers that defined life in the forest. The canopy, formed by the tallest trees, captured most of the sunlight and sheltered countless creatures. Birds, arboreal reptiles, and flying insects occupied this layer, feeding on leaves, fruits, and smaller animals. Below the canopy, the understory consisted of smaller trees, shrubs, and climbing plants. Many animals lived in this mid-level zone, moving between branches and roots to escape predators or search for food. At the forest floor, life was slow, cautious, and often dangerous. Large herbivores pushed through ferns and moss, while carnivores used shadows, fallen logs, and tangled roots to stalk their prey. Each layer was interconnected, and changes in one could affect life throughout the forest. Trees themselves were dynamic forces within the ecosystem. Their growth patterns determined the structure of the forest, creating pathways, barriers, and shelters. Some species grew in clusters, forming near impenetrable walls, while others spread apart to create corridors or gaps that allowed light to reach the forest floor. Falling trees altered the landscape, opening up clearings that provided sunlight for younger plants while simultaneously creating obstacles for animals. Rotting trunks and decaying leaves enriched the soil, supporting fungi, mosses, and new plant growth. Each tree, in life and death, shaped the forest in ways that influenced every creature living among it. Predators in these forests were highly specialized. Large reptiles had strong limbs and sharp claws to climb or ambush prey from above. Carnivorous mammals developed keen senses of smell and hearing to detect movement in near darkness. Some predators worked in groups, coordinating attacks to corner animals within dense vegetation. Birds of prey relied on sharp eyesight and silent flight, swooping down to catch insects, small mammals, or reptiles. Each hunting strategy depended heavily on the forest's density. Open areas provided fewer advantages for predators, but the majority of the forest was thick, tangled, and shadowed, giving them nearly constant opportunities to stalk prey unseen. Prey animals developed equally impressive adaptations. Camouflage was essential. Fur, scales, or feathers often mirrored the colors of leaves, bark, and shadows. Many animals learned to move slowly and deliberately, minimizing noise and vibrations that could alert predators. Quick bursts of speed were reserved for critical moments because dense undergrowth could easily slow movement or cause injury. Arboreal animals used vines, branches, and hollows to escape, while ground-dwelling species relied on tunnels, thick roots, and hidden burrows. Behavioral adaptation was as important as physical adaptation, with survival depending on strategy, caution, and constant vigilance. Water sources within the forests created another dimension of complexity. Rivers, streams, and temporary ponds provided food, drinking water, and breeding grounds. However, these areas were also dangerous. Predators often waited near water sources for prey, knowing that animals would be forced to enter these exposed areas to survive. Flooding was frequent during rainy seasons, washing away plants, changing river courses, and creating new obstacles on the forest floor. Muddy banks and slippery stones made movement treacherous, and even minor missteps could lead to injury or death. Animals learned to navigate these hazards carefully, developing instincts and habits that increased their chances of survival. The constant rainfall and high humidity supported extraordinary plant growth. Mosses, ferns, and lichens thrived, covering every available surface with a soft green layer. Vines climbed tirelessly, connecting trees and creating natural bridges that allowed animals to move above the forest floor. Flowers bloomed intermittently, providing food for insects and animals while adding bursts of color to the green-dominated landscape. Fungi grew on fallen wood and decomposing plant matter, breaking it down into nutrients that sustained the next generation of plants. Each organism depended on another, forming a tightly knit web of life that ensured the forest remained dense, complex, and competitive. Trees shaped microclimates within the forest. Tall canopies blocked wind and sunlight, creating cooler, darker, and more humid conditions beneath. Rainwater collected on leaves and dripped slowly to the ground, sometimes pooling in depressions or forming temporary streams. Fallen leaves trapped moisture and provided insulation for small creatures. Vines, shrubs, and roots slowed movement of water across the forest floor, allowing small pools and wetlands to form even after heavy rainfall. These microclimates influenced feeding patterns, migration, and behavior, making life in the forest a constant negotiation between safety, food, and environmental conditions. The dangers of the forest were not limited to predators or obstacles. Falling branches, decaying trunks, and unstable root systems created hidden hazards. A tree could collapse unexpectedly, crushing anything beneath it. Dead logs could conceal pits, holes, or sharp objects that caused injury. Even plants themselves sometimes posed threats. Thorny vines and spiny shrubs could trap or wound animals, making them vulnerable to predation. Survival required not only strength and speed, but also awareness of every element in the environment, from the largest tree to the smallest root tip. Seasonal changes added further challenges. During the wet season, heavy rainfall increased humidity, deepened mud, and swelled rivers and streams. Many paths became unusable, forcing animals to find alternative routes. Insects multiplied rapidly, increasing both food sources and disease risk. During drier periods, sunlight penetrated the canopy more easily, changing plant growth patterns and creating temporary clearings. Predators and prey had to adapt their movement and feeding behaviors to these changes, responding to fluctuations in water availability, plant growth, and prey density. The forest was a constantly shifting environment, demanding flexibility and intelligence for survival. The forest's density limited visibility, creating an almost constant state of tension for all creatures. Predators could approach unnoticed, and prey could vanish in a moment, blending into shadows or moving silently through undergrowth. Sounds traveled differently through dense vegetation, making it difficult to locate threats or prey accurately. Scent trails could be masked by moisture, fallen leaves, or other animals, requiring keen olfactory skills. Every movement, sound, or smell carried significance, influencing behavior, decisions, and survival strategies. The dense vegetation amplified the importance of instinct, experience, and awareness in navigating life within the forest. Roots formed intricate networks across the forest floor, connecting trees and stabilizing the massive soil structure. Some roots rose above the ground, creating natural barriers and tunnels that animals could use for shelter or movement. Others ran deep, supporting the immense weight of towering trees and preventing soil erosion. The combination of above-ground and underground roots shaped the terrain, creating obstacles and pathways that defined movement patterns. Animals learned to navigate this complex network, using it to find food, escape predators, and access water sources. Even decomposing matter played a vital role in forest life. Fallen leaves, rotting wood, and decaying plants created rich soil that sustained new growth. Fungi, bacteria, and insects fed on this material, breaking it down and recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. Small animals fed on fungi, insects, and decomposed matter, while larger predators fed on the animals that consumed it. Life and death were intertwined, forming a cycle in which every organism contributed to the survival of others, directly or indirectly. Vines were not just obstacles, they created opportunities for movement. Arboreal animals used vines to swing from tree to tree, escape predators, or access food sources. Vines formed natural bridges that connected layers of vegetation, creating pathways invisible from the forest floor. However, these same vines could trap animals if misused or if weakened by decay. Predators used vines to reach prey or hide during ambushes, while prey relied on their agility and knowledge of the vine network to avoid capture. The dense vegetation transformed the forest into a three-dimensional maze of life and danger. Large fallen logs created temporary shelters and barriers. Animals nested in hollows or under logs to avoid predators or harsh weather. Some logs created bridges over streams or obstacles on the forest floor, altering movement patterns and creating new microhabitats. The decomposition process gradually returned nutrients to the soil, feeding mosses, ferns, fungi, and small plants. The presence of fallen trees influenced the entire ecosystem, shaping behavior, movement, and survival of countless species. Life in the forest was a constant test of endurance. Every animal, from the smallest insect to the largest herbivore, had to negotiate obstacles, avoid predators, and find food and water in a landscape that challenged every step. Survival required physical strength, intelligence, awareness, and adaptability. Every element of the forest, the dense canopy, tangled vines, twisted roots, fallen logs, streams, pools, and changing seasons, interacted to create an ecosystem of extraordinary complexity and danger. The forests of giants maintained their density for millions of years. Trees grew tall and close together, creating thick canopies and near-impenetrable undergrowth. Fallen trees and decaying matter enriched the soil, encouraging new growth and maintaining the cycle of life. Water, sunlight, and nutrients were constantly contested, driving competition among plants and animals. Predators and prey co-evolved, shaping each other's behaviors, strengths, and strategies. The forest was a living system, dynamic, interconnected, and unrelenting in its demands on every creature within it. Even the quietest moments carried risk. Predators moved silently through shadows, insects buzzed unseen, and the slightest noise could attract attention. Small prey animals relied on camouflage, alertness, and careful movement to survive. Larger animals used strength, knowledge, and coordination to navigate obstacles. Every day, survival depended on reading the environment, anticipating threats, and adapting behavior. The dense vegetation left no room for carelessness, making the forest one of the most challenging habitats that life on Earth has ever known. Over time, the forests of giants shaped the evolution of species in remarkable ways. Animals developed enhanced senses, strength, agility, and intelligence to survive the dense, dangerous environment. Plants adapted to low light, crowded space, and constant competition. Every organism, from the largest predator to the smallest fungus, played a role in maintaining the balance of life. The interaction between species and the environment created a web of life in which survival depended on constant adaptation, vigilance, and understanding of the forest's hidden dangers. Every tree, vine, root, and fallen log had significance. Paths through the forest were limited and often treacherous. Water, food, and shelter were distributed unevenly, forcing animals to take risks to survive. Predators exploited these limitations, waiting in ambush or pursuing prey through narrow passages. Prey species developed complex strategies, relying on stealth, agility, and knowledge of the terrain. The forest's density created an environment where only the most adaptable and alert could survive and thrive over long periods. The forests of giants were ecosystems of unmatched danger and complexity. Dense vegetation, towering trees, tangled roots, fallen logs, and constant moisture created an environment where every movement carried risk. Predators and prey coexisted in a delicate balance, shaped by evolution and behavior. Seasonal changes, water availability, and microclimates influenced movement and survival. Life in the forest required constant vigilance, adaptation, and skill. The environment itself was a force, shaping every organism and maintaining an extraordinary level of complexity, challenge, and danger. In the end, the forests of giants were more than a collection of trees and plants. They were living, breathing ecosystems where life existed in constant negotiation with danger, scarcity, and opportunity. Every element, from the tallest tree to the smallest root, contributed to the cycle of life and death. Predators stalked silently, prey navigated obstacles with care, and plants competed for sunlight, space, and nutrients. The forests demanded endurance, intelligence, and adaptability from every organism, creating one of the most formidable and extraordinary habitats in Earth's history. The challenges of these forests shaped life over millions of years. The thick, tangled vegetation forced animals to develop exceptional abilities. Predators became masters of stealth, camouflage, and precision. Prey species learned to move silently, hide effectively, and exploit every feature of the environment for survival. The cycle of growth, decay, and regeneration maintained the density and complexity of the ecosystem. Life adapted to obstacles, scarcity, and danger, resulting in a remarkable display of evolutionary ingenuity. Water, weather, and seasonal variation created constant challenges. Rivers flooded, rain fell heavily, and fog settled between giant trees. Muddy terrain slowed movement, slippery roots caused falls, and fallen logs blocked paths. Even small miscalculations could be fatal. Animals relied on strength, skill, and experience to navigate safely. Plants adapted to these conditions, growing rapidly to occupy space, stabilize soil, and produce seeds for future generations. The forest was a living test of endurance, alertness, and adaptation. The dense undergrowth and thick canopy shaped the very structure of the forest. Light was limited on the forest floor, forcing plants to develop large leaves or grow quickly to reach sunlight. Animals adapted to the shadows, developing camouflage, heightened senses, and careful movement strategies. Predators exploited darkness, using it to conceal themselves and launch sudden attacks. Prey species relied on agility, knowledge of terrain, and timing to survive. Every interaction was influenced by the dense, layered structure of the forest. Life in the forests of giants was relentless, challenging, and highly competitive. Predators and prey coexisted in a system of checks and balances shaped by evolution. Plants competed for sunlight, space, and nutrients. Water sources dictated movement patterns and feeding opportunities. Fallen logs, tangled roots, and vines created obstacles and shelters. Every organism had to navigate this complex environment, responding to dangers, opportunities, and changes in the ecosystem. The forest demanded constant adaptation and vigilance. The forests of giants were dangerous beyond imagination. Predators lurked in shadows, prey could be trapped by vines or roots, and falling branches or trees created hidden hazards. The dense vegetation slowed movement, limited visibility, and forced animals into predictable paths. Survival required intelligence, strength, agility, and caution. Every element of the forest, from the towering canopy to the smallest undergrowth, shaped the lives of every creature within it. Even after millions of years, the dense forests continued to dominate landscapes. Their trees reached incredible heights, roots twisted through the soil, and vines connected every layer of vegetation. Fallen logs and decomposing matter maintained nutrient cycles and created microhabitats. Streams and rivers carved paths through the undergrowth, influencing movement and behavior. Predators and prey adapted to every challenge, and plants continued to compete for space, light, and nutrients. The forests of giants remained one of the most dangerous, complex, and enduring ecosystems in Earth's history. Life within these forests required constant vigilance and adaptation. Animals had to move carefully to avoid obstacles, predators, and environmental hazards. Predators exploited the dense vegetation for stealth and hunting advantages. Plants shaped movement patterns, provided shelter, and competed for sunlight. Water, seasonal changes, and microclimates influenced survival strategies. Every organism interacted with others and the environment, forming a web of life where survival depended on skill, intelligence, and adaptation. The forests of giants were ecosystems of extraordinary complexity and danger. Their towering trees, dense undergrowth, tangled roots, and continuous moisture created a habitat where every step carried risk. Predators and prey coexisted in a delicate balance, shaped by evolution and environmental pressures. Seasonal variation, microclimates, and water distribution influenced movement, feeding, and reproduction. Life requires endurance, alertness, and intelligence. The forest was a living system in which every organism contributed to the cycle of life, death, and renewal, maintaining one of the most formidable environments in Earth's history. The swamps were not quiet places of peace. They were living traps. Thick water spread across wide lands, heavy with mud, rotting plants, and tangled roots. The air above them felt warm and wet. Insects buzzed without rest. The smell of decay rose from the ground and clung to everything. The surface of the water often looked still, almost harmless, but that stillness was a lie. Beneath it, life waited in silence. In these wetlands, every step near the water's edge could mean survival or sudden death. In ancient times, long before modern cities and roads existed, vast swamps covered great parts of the earth. Some of these wetlands stretched across what is now the Amazon basin in South America, where thick forests and flooded plains blended into one endless green world. Others spread across regions that are today parts of North America, Africa, and Asia. During the age of dinosaurs, especially in the late Cretaceous period, which ended about 66 million years ago, warm climates created ideal conditions for wide, slow-moving rivers and swamps. These waters were shallow in some places, deep in others, and always difficult to see through. Mud, plant matter, and fine sand mixed together to form a dark soup that hid what lay beneath. The ground near the swamp was rarely firm. It looked solid at first glance, covered by leaves and fallen branches. But underneath, the soil was soft and unstable. One wrong step could cause a heavy animal to sink deep into the mud. Smaller creatures could become trapped without warning. Even large predators had to move carefully, but some hunters had learned to use the swamp's danger to their advantage. In the prehistoric wetlands of what is now South America, giant reptiles ruled the waters. One of the most terrifying was Deinosuchus, whose name means terrible crocodile. This massive reptile lived around 75 million years ago. It could grow more than 30 feet long and weigh several tons. Its body was built for ambush. It did not need speed across open land. It needed patience. Deinosuchus would sink its huge body into the muddy water, leaving only its eyes and nostrils above the surface. From a distance, it looked like nothing more than a floating log. When a dinosaur came close to drink, the swamp would suddenly explode into movement. With a powerful thrust of its tail, Deinosuchus would surge forward. Its jaws, lined with thick, crushing teeth, would clamp onto bone and flesh. Some scientists believe it could even drag large dinosaurs into the water. Once submerged, the prey would struggle in panic, but the muddy water offered no grip, no escape. The crocodile would spin violently in what is known today as a death roll, tearing apart its victim. The swamp would quickly grow still again, hiding the evidence beneath its dark surface. Deinosuchus was not alone. Other ancient crocodilians and reptilian hunters lived in these waters. In Africa, a massive predator called Sarcosuchus swam through river systems around 110 million years ago. It could grow up to 40 feet long. Its long snout held over 100 sharp teeth designed to seize slippery prey. Sarcosuchus likely hunted fish, but it may also have attacked dinosaurs that ventured too close. In a swamp, even a giant herbivore weighing many tons could become helpless if pulled into deep water. The danger did not only come from reptiles. The wetlands were filled with strange amphibians and large fish. Some prehistoric fish grew to enormous sizes. In ancient rivers and swamps, fish like Xiphactinus reached lengths of more than 15 feet. With powerful jaws and sharp teeth, they could swallow prey almost as large as themselves. Though they lived mostly in marine waters, similar giant fish occupied inland waterways. The murky water gave them cover. Smaller animals swimming near the surface could vanish in seconds. On land, predators waited along the edges. Theropod dinosaurs, the group that included Tyrannosaurus rex, often hunted near water sources. In what is now North America, Tyrannosaurus rex lived until the end of the Cretaceous period, about 66 million years ago. Although it was a land predator, it likely approached swamps and riverbanks in search of prey. But even a creature that powerful had to be careful. The swamp did not respect size. Soft ground could trap heavy bodies. A fall into deep mud could become fatal. In South America during the Miocene epoch, around 23 to 5 million years ago, giant predators still ruled swampy lands. One of them was Purosaurus, a huge caiman relative that lived in what is now the Amazon region. It could grow over 40 feet long. Its bite force may have been one of the strongest ever measured among animals. In flooded forests and wide wetlands, Purosaurus would have been almost invisible beneath the water. Mammals that came to drink, including early relatives of modern deer or large rodents, faced constant danger. A sudden splash, a flash of teeth, and the water would swallow them. The swamps also hid dangers that were not always alive. Thick mats of plants floated on the surface, creating what looked like solid ground. Beneath these green carpets lay deep water or sticky mud. Animals walking across them could break through and sink. Once trapped, panic would make escape even harder. Fossil evidence shows that some dinosaurs became stuck in mud and died slowly, unable to free themselves. Their bones were later covered by layers of sediment, preserving them for millions of years. Insects thrived in these wetlands. Mosquitoes, flies, and other biting insects swarmed in clouds. For animals, these pests were more than annoying. They could carry disease. Wounds from bites could become infected in the damp environment. The heat and moisture encouraged bacteria to grow quickly. Even a small injury could turn deadly if left untreated. While large predators dominated the water, tiny creatures filled the air, making life in the swamp a constant struggle. The plants themselves added to the danger. Tall reeds and thick ferns blocked vision. Massive trees with wide roots created shadowy areas where predators could hide. Fallen logs lay half-submerged, looking solid but often unstable. Vines hung low, ready to trip passing animals. The swamp was not an open battlefield where enemies could see each other from far away. It was a maze. Every corner held uncertainty. Over time, as the age of dinosaurs ended and mammals rose to power, the swamps remained dangerous. During the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, which began after 66 million years ago, warm climates continued to support wetlands. Crocodilians survived the mass extinction that ended the dinosaurs. They adapted and continued to thrive in swamps across the world. In what is now Africa and Asia, ancient crocodiles and their relatives hunted in rivers and marshes much like their modern descendants. Even today, swamps can be deadly. In parts of the Amazon basin, large caimans still hide beneath muddy waters. The black caiman can grow over 16 feet long. Though smaller than ancient giants, it is still a powerful predator. In Africa, the Nile crocodile remains one of the most feared animals near water. It can grow over 20 feet long and is responsible for many attacks on humans each year. These modern predators behave much like their prehistoric ancestors. They wait, they watch, they strike without warning. But in ancient times, the scale of danger was even greater. The climate during parts of the Cretaceous period was warmer than today. Sea levels were higher. Large areas of land were covered by shallow seas, coastal marshes, and swamps. In what is now the western interior of North America, a vast inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway split the continent in two around 100 million years ago. Along its shores and in nearby wetlands, predators thrived. The mix of saltwater and freshwater created rich ecosystems filled with life. And where there is life, there are hunters. Fossils found in swamp deposits tell stories of sudden death. Bones are often discovered in clusters, suggesting animals died together, perhaps trapped by mud or attacked near water. In some fossil beds, marks on bones reveal the bite patterns of large crocodilians. Scientists study these marks to understand how ancient predators fed. The evidence shows crushing forces strong enough to break thick dinosaur bones. The murky water was the perfect cover. Vision is limited in such environments. Mud particles scatter light, making it difficult to see even a short distance below the surface. For a prey animal, this meant constant uncertainty. A calm pool could hide a predator just inches away. Drinking water became an act of courage. Herds of herbivorous dinosaurs likely approached cautiously, sending smaller individuals first or choosing shallow areas. But no strategy could remove the risk entirely. Seasonal changes made swamps even more dangerous. During dry periods, water levels dropped. Animals gathered around shrinking pools, increasing competition and tension. Predators knew this and focused their hunting there. During wet seasons, floods expanded the swamp, spreading animals across wider areas. Fast-moving water could sweep smaller creatures away. Heavy rains turned firm ground into deep mud. Travel became slow and exhausting. The sounds of the swamp added to the fear. Frogs croaked loudly, insects hummed, birds cried out from treetops. The splash of a fish or the crack of a branch could signal danger, but often the attack came in silence. Crocodilian predators are masters of stillness. They can remain motionless for long periods, conserving energy. Their eyes sit high on their heads, allowing them to see while the rest of their body stays hidden. Their nostrils are positioned to breathe without exposing themselves. When a predator struck, the event was quick. Speed and surprise were its main weapons. For prey animals, survival depended on alertness and group behavior. Some species likely developed sharp hearing and quick reflexes. Others may have avoided water during certain times of day, but thirst and hunger always brought them back. The swamp also shaped evolution. Animals that could swim well had an advantage. Some dinosaurs, like Spinosaurus, showed adaptations that suggest semi-aquatic habits. Spinosaurus lived around 95 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It had long jaws filled with conical teeth suited for catching fish. Its body may have been partly adapted for swimming. In swampy environments, such traits allowed it to compete with crocodilians for prey. But sharing territory with giant reptiles would have been risky even for a predator of its size. Plants in the swamp played a quiet but powerful role. As they died and fell into the water, they did not fully decay because of low oxygen levels in the mud. Over millions of years, layers of plant material built up and were buried under sediment. In some regions, this process eventually formed coal deposits. These coal beds are reminders of ancient swamps that once covered vast landscapes during periods like the Carboniferous, around 300 million years ago. At that time, giant insects and early amphibians lived in dense wetlands. Oxygen levels were higher than today, allowing insects to grow larger than modern species. Even then, the swamp was a place of both life and danger. The Carboniferous swamps were filled with towering plants like lycopsids and giant horsetails. The ground was wet and unstable. Early amphibians moved through shallow waters, hunting smaller creatures. Large arthropods, including massive dragonfly-like insects, flew above. Though the predators were different from those of the dinosaur age, the pattern remained the same. Murky water concealed threats. Soft ground trapped the unwary. Survival required caution at every step. Across different eras, from the Carboniferous to the Cretaceous and into the age of mammals, swamps shared common features. They were rich in life because water and warmth supported plants and animals. But that same richness created intense competition. Predators evolved to use the environment as a weapon. Camouflage, patience, and sudden force became key strategies. The idea of the swamp as a deadly place is not only based on fossils. Modern science studies how crocodiles hunt today to understand ancient behavior. High-speed cameras show how quickly a crocodile can launch from still water. Powerful muscles in the tail provide explosive force. Once jaws close, escape is rare. Bite force measurements of large modern crocodiles reach thousands of pounds per square inch. Ancient giants like Deinosuchus and Purosaurus likely exceeded even those values. Even the chemistry of the swamp contributed to its deadly nature. Decomposing plants release gases such as methane. Bubbles rise slowly to the surface, sometimes disturbing the water. In enclosed areas, these gases can reduce oxygen levels. Fish and other aquatic animals must adapt or move. The smell of decay fills the air. For land animals, this environment can be stressful and disorienting. At night, the swamp changes character, but not its danger. Darkness adds another layer of concealment. Many predators are active in low light. Eyeshine from crocodilians can sometimes be seen reflecting moonlight, but only if one looks carefully. Prey animals must rely on hearing and instinct. A single misstep near the bank can lead to a sudden plunge into cold, grasping water. Human ancestors, much later in history, also faced the dangers of swamps. Early humans in Africa would have encountered crocodiles along rivers and marshes. Even today, people living near wetlands must remain cautious. Stories passed down through generations often describe mysterious creatures beneath the water. These tales are rooted in real danger. The behavior of ambush predators has changed little over millions of years. Fossil discoveries continue to reveal how deadly these environments were. In parts of what is now Texas and Montana, fossils of Deinosuchus have been found alongside dinosaur remains bearing tooth marks. In the Amazon region, fossils of Purosaurus show massive skulls with thick teeth designed for crushing. These remains are not just bones. They are evidence of violent encounters that once shook the water and echoed through the trees. The swamp did not forgive weakness. Injured animals had little chance. The smell of blood and water can attract predators quickly. Once an animal was dragged under, other scavengers might join. Turtles, fish, and smaller crocodilians would feed on remains. Nature wasted nothing. Yet despite all its dangers, the swamp was not a place of constant chaos. It followed rhythms. Sunrise brought birds to the water's edge. Afternoon heat slowed movement. Evening shadows stretched across the surface. Life continued because animals adapted. They learned patterns, recognized warning signs, and passed survival behaviors through generations. But the balance was always fragile. A drought could shrink the swamp and increase conflict. A flood could change channels and create new hazards. Volcanic eruptions or climate shifts could transform entire regions. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid impact near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula led to global changes that ended the age of non-avian dinosaurs. Swamps burned, skies darkened, temperatures dropped. Many species vanished, yet crocodilians survived, retreating into water where conditions were more stable. The swamp once again proved to be both deadly and protective. Over millions of years, continents shifted. Mountain ranges rose, rivers changed course. Some ancient swamps dried and turned into grasslands or deserts. Others remained, continuing the cycle of growth and decay. In each era, the details changed, but the core truth stayed the same. Murky wetlands hid predators beneath the surface. The calm water masked sudden violence. The soft ground concealed traps. To stand at the edge of such a swamp in prehistoric times would have required courage. The air would press heavy against the skin. The calls of unseen animals would echo from dense vegetation. Every ripple in the water would raise suspicion. Drinking, crossing, hunting, or simply resting near the bank could become a fatal decision. The swamp was not evil, it was simply efficient. It offered opportunity to those adapted to its rules and punishment to those who ignored them. Predators blended into shadows and water. Prey relied on speed, numbers, and caution. The struggle played out again and again, day after day, year after year, for millions of years. The wetlands provided life-sustaining water, rich plant growth, and shelter. At the same time, they turned that shelter into a weapon. Mud became a trap. Water became a hiding place. Stillness became a sign of danger. Even now, when scientists walk through modern swamps to study wildlife or search for fossils, they move carefully. They test the ground before stepping. They watch the water's edge. They listen for sudden movement. The ancient memory of danger remains built into human instinct. Across deep time, from 300 million years ago in the Carboniferous to the age of giant crocodiles in the Miocene, and into the present day, swamps have held the same secret beneath their dark surfaces. What appears calm may hide power. What seems silent may be waiting. In these wetlands, every step near water has always been a gamble between life and death. The land that is now called the Amazon rainforest was not always the thick, wet, green forest that people imagine today. During the age of dinosaurs, this region was part of a very different world. The continents were arranged in another way. The climate worked in another way. The rivers flowed in different directions. Even the plants that covered the land were not the same kinds of plants that grow there now. During much of the dinosaur age, the land that would later become South America was part of a giant supercontinent known as Gondwana. This enormous landmass included what are now Africa, Antarctica, Australia, India, and South America. Because the continents were joined together, the weather patterns were different from what we see today. Ocean currents moved in other directions. There were no modern Atlantic or Pacific coastlines in the shape we recognize now. At different times during the dinosaur era, the region that would one day be the Amazon changed greatly. In some periods it was dry and open. In other periods it was wet and filled with rivers and swamps. The age of dinosaurs lasted from about 252 million years ago until about 66 million years ago. Over that long stretch of time, the land in northern South America went through major changes. In the earlier part of the dinosaur age, during the Triassic period, much of the interior of Gondwana was hot and dry. The The region that would become the Amazon may have looked more like a vast plain than a jungle. There were wide open spaces, scattered plants, and river systems that sometimes dried up during long dry seasons. Instead of tall flowering trees, the land was covered mainly with ferns, seed ferns, cycads, and early conifer trees. Cycads looked like short palm trees with thick trunks and a crown of stiff leaves. Conifers were early relatives of modern pine trees, though many of them were different from any trees alive today. There were no flowering plants yet. Flowers would not appear until much later in the dinosaur age. The ground would have been covered with low plants, mosses, and patches of vegetation near rivers and lakes. The animals were just as different. Early dinosaurs were still small compared to the giants that would come later. Other reptiles, including large crocodile-like creatures and strange mammal-like reptiles, also walked the land. The region was part of a wide, connected world, so animals could move across large distances without oceans blocking their path. As time passed and the Jurassic period began, the climate in many parts of Gondwana became warmer and wetter. Forests spread. The land that would one day become the Amazon may have turned greener, with larger river systems and thicker plant growth. Dinosaurs grew larger and more diverse. During the Jurassic and especially the Cretaceous period, South America began to slowly separate from Africa. This separation would eventually form the Atlantic Ocean. But in the early stages, the land was still close, and similar species lived on both sides. Fossils found in Brazil and Africa show that certain dinosaur groups lived in both places, proving that the continents were once joined. In what is now Brazil, paleontologists have discovered fossils of large meat-eating dinosaurs, such as Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus relatives, though many of the best-known fossils of these species come from Africa. These predators likely hunted near rivers and wetlands. If you could stand in the ancient Amazon region during the Cretaceous, you might see massive river channels winding across broad floodplains. Along the edges of the water, giant carnivorous dinosaurs could have searched for fish or smaller dinosaurs. There were also large plant-eating dinosaurs. Long-necked sauropods walked across the landscape, feeding on tall trees. Some of these sauropods in South America belonged to groups that later became known as titanosaurs. These enormous animals could reach lengths of more than 20 meters. They moved slowly but steadily, shaking the ground with each step. The plant life during the later part of the dinosaur age changed in a major way. Flowering plants, known as angiosperms, began to appear during the Cretaceous period. At first they were rare. Over time they spread and became more common. This changed the look of the forests. Instead of being dominated only by ferns, cycads, and conifers, the land started to include plants that produced flowers and fruits. This change in plants also affected insects. Bees and other pollinators evolved to feed on nectar and help plants reproduce. The forest floor would have become more complex, with layers of plants, shrubs, and small trees. However, the dinosaur age Amazon was still not the same as today's rainforest. It did not yet have the full diversity of modern tropical trees. Another major difference was the shape of the land itself. The Andes Mountains did not exist in their current form during most of the dinosaur era. The rise of the Andes happened mainly after the dinosaurs were gone. Because the Andes were not yet towering along the western edge of South America, the drainage patterns of rivers were different. Instead of flowing eastward toward the Atlantic as the modern Amazon River does, ancient rivers may have flowed in other directions, sometimes toward the west or into inland basins. Without the Andes acting as a barrier, the region's climate and water systems worked in another way. The modern Amazon rainforest depends heavily on moisture carried from the Atlantic Ocean and trapped by the Andes, which helps create heavy rainfall. In the dinosaur age, rainfall patterns were shaped by different coastlines and mountain ranges. The land may have had large inland seas or shallow coastal waters at times. Parts of northern South America were covered by shallow marine environments during certain periods of the Cretaceous. This means that areas that are now forest may once have been underwater. Fossils of marine reptiles and sea creatures found in parts of Brazil and neighboring countries show that the ocean reached far inland at times. The soil itself was different. Modern Amazon soil is often surprisingly poor in nutrients, despite the rich plant life. It depends on fast recycling of organic matter. In the dinosaur age, soils would have formed under different climates and plant types. The thick layer of decaying leaves that supports today's rainforest ecosystem may not have been as developed in the same way. The sky would have looked different too. There were no birds as we know them in the early part of the dinosaur age, though later some dinosaurs evolved into early birds. Pterosaurs, flying reptiles with long wings, soared above rivers and forests. Insects were abundant, and some were very large compared to modern species, especially in earlier prehistoric times. If you walk through the Cretaceous forests of northern South America, you would not hear the calls of monkeys or the songs of modern tropical birds. Mammals were present, but they were small and usually active at night. They hid from the giant reptiles that ruled the land. The dominance of dinosaurs shaped every part of the ecosystem. Predators were often at the top of the food chain. Large theropod dinosaurs hunted smaller dinosaurs and other animals. Their presence influenced how plant eaters moved and gathered. Herds of sauropods may have traveled together for safety. Smaller plant-eating dinosaurs could have darted through undergrowth to avoid being caught. The rivers would have been full of life as well. Crocodile-like reptiles, some much larger than modern crocodiles, lurked in the water. Fish species were different from today's Amazon fish. Some ancient fish groups have no direct modern descendants. Turtles and amphibians also lived along the banks. The climate during much of the Cretaceous was warmer than today's global climate. There were no polar ice caps. Sea levels were higher. Tropical and subtropical conditions extended far from the equator. This warmth helped create lush plant growth in many regions, including parts of Gondwana. However, the Amazon region was not always continuously wet. There were times when the climate shifted and became drier. Geological evidence suggests cycles of wet and dry periods. These shifts would have changed the types of plants and animals that could survive there. The breakup of Gondwana slowly separated South America from Africa. As the continents drifted apart, species on each landmass began to evolve separately. Over millions of years, this isolation led to unique dinosaur species in South America. Titanosaurs became especially important in this region. Some of the largest dinosaurs ever found, such as Argentinosaurus, lived in what is now Argentina. Though Argentina is south of the Amazon basin, it shows how important South America was for sauropod evolution. The northern parts of the continent, including the future Amazon region, likely had their own distinct dinosaur communities. Fossils from Brazil reveal a rich mix of theropods, sauropods, and smaller dinosaurs. These animals lived in ecosystems that may have combined open floodplains, forest patches, and river deltas. The end of the dinosaur age came suddenly in geological terms. About 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. This event is linked to the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. Dust and debris filled the atmosphere, sunlight was blocked, plants died, food chains collapsed. The impact affected the entire planet, including South America. Dinosaurs, except for their bird descendants, disappeared. The ecosystems that had existed for millions of years were destroyed or severely changed. In the time that followed, mammals began to grow larger and more diverse. The Amazon region, after the extinction, was not yet the rainforest we know. It took tens of millions of years for modern rainforest ecosystems to develop. The rise of the Andes played a key role. As these mountains grew higher, they changed rainfall patterns. They helped create the conditions for the vast, wet forest that now stretches across northern South America. Another important change was the direction of the Amazon River. For a long time after the dinosaurs disappeared, the river system may have flowed westward toward the Pacific Ocean. Only later, as the Andes continued to rise and block the western route, did the river reverse and begin flowing eastward toward the Atlantic. The spread of flowering plants after the extinction event transformed tropical ecosystems. Trees with broad leaves and complex root systems became dominant. Over millions of years, the dense canopy structure of the modern rainforest formed. Layers of vegetation created habitats for countless insects, birds, reptiles, and mammals. When we compare the Amazon of the dinosaur age to the Amazon of today, the differences are striking. Today's rainforest is known for its incredible biodiversity. It is home to jaguars, sloths, monkeys, parrots, frogs, and thousands of plant species. During the dinosaur age, the dominant large animals were reptiles, not mammals. The plant community was simpler in the early periods and only began to resemble modern tropical forests near the end of the Cretaceous. The soundscape would have been different. Instead of howler monkeys and tropical birds, there would have been the heavy footsteps of sauropods, the sharp calls of predatory dinosaurs, and the buzzing of insects. The air may have felt heavier and warmer in certain periods. The smell of conifer resin and fern-covered ground would have replaced the scent of modern flowering trees. The ground itself would have been shaped by giant animals. Sauropods could knock down trees as they fed. Their droppings would have fertilized the land, spreading plant seeds. Predators would have left bones scattered across floodplains. Seasonal floods would have buried remains in mud, preserving them as fossils that scientists now uncover. Modern researchers study rock layers and fossils in Brazil and other parts of South America to piece together this lost world. Each fossil discovery adds detail. Tooth marks on bones show feeding behavior. Pollen grains preserved in rock reveal which plants were present. Sediment layers show whether an area was once a river, a lake, or a dry plain. When the Great Extinction struck at the end of the age of dinosaurs, the world did not simply become quiet and empty. The disaster that wiped out the giant reptiles changed everything. Forests burned, the skies darkened, and many powerful species disappeared forever. But once the dust slowly settled and sunlight returned, life began to rebuild itself. The disappearance of the dinosaurs created something unusual: space. There was suddenly room to grow, hunt, compete, and evolve in new ways. For millions of years before this moment, dinosaurs had ruled almost every corner of the land. They were the largest plant eaters, the most feared meat eaters, and the dominant presence in nearly every ecosystem. Smaller animals survived in their shadows. Many early mammals stayed small, often no bigger than modern rats or small cats. They lived quietly, mostly active at night, feeding on insects, seeds, and scraps, careful not to attract attention. But after the extinction event around 66 million years ago, the balance of power shifted. With the largest predators gone, the world became open territory. Forests regrow, rivers stabilized, plants spread across continents again. And in this new world, the survivors began to change. Reptiles were among the first to take advantage of the empty spaces. Crocodile relatives, for example, thrived in rivers and wetlands. Some ancient crocodilians grew much larger than most living species today. One famous example is Deinosuchus, a massive predator that could reach lengths of over 30 feet. With powerful jaws and thick armor-like skin, it dominated waterways and preyed on almost anything that came near the water's edge. In this new era, reptiles like these became some of the most dangerous hunters alive. On land, mammals began their slow but powerful rise. At first, they remained small. But without giant dinosaurs to compete with, natural selection pushed them toward larger body sizes. Bigger animals could travel farther, defend themselves better, and hunt more effectively. Over millions of years, mammals grew from tiny, hidden creatures into large, bold predators and plant eaters. Some early mammalian predators became truly fearsome. One of the most striking examples was Andrewsarchus, believed to be one of the largest land mammals that ever hunted meat. With a long skull and strong jaws, it likely crushed bones and tore through flesh with ease. It showed that mammals were no longer just small survivors. They were becoming top hunters. Another terrifying predator was Titanoboa, a giant snake that lived about 60 million years ago. It could grow up to 40 feet long and weigh more than a ton. In warm, swampy forests, it ambushed prey in the water, squeezing the life out of large animals before swallowing them whole. Its enormous size was possible because the climate was hotter than today, allowing cold-blooded reptiles to grow larger than most modern species. Birds, which are the direct descendants of certain dinosaurs, also grew into powerful predators. One remarkable example was Gastornis, a huge flightless bird that stood over 6 feet tall. With a heavy beak and strong legs, it was once thought to be a fierce hunter. Even if it was more of a plant eater, its size alone made it an intimidating presence in early forests. The oceans were no less dangerous. Marine reptiles were gone, but new predators evolved quickly. Early whales such as Basilosaurus grew long and powerful, reaching lengths of around 60 feet. Unlike modern whales that filter feed on tiny organisms, this ancient whale had sharp teeth and hunted other marine animals. It ruled warm seas and showed how mammals were now taking control of environments once dominated by reptilian giants. This period after the dinosaurs became a time of rapid experimentation in evolution. Animals grew larger because they could. They became more aggressive because competition demanded it. Ecosystems were rebuilding, and every species fought to secure its place. Some lineages grew huge and terrifying, while others stayed small and clever. Survival no longer depended on hiding from dinosaurs, but on outcompeting new rivals. Over tens of millions of years, this predator-filled world slowly shaped the animals we know today. Modern lions, bears, wolves, crocodiles, and even humans are distant products of that explosive period of change. The extinction that once seemed like total destruction turned out to be a powerful reset. It cleared the stage, removed the old rulers, and allowed new giants to rise. The world after the dinosaurs was not peaceful. It was wild, unstable, and full of danger, but it was also full of opportunity. In that harsh and competitive landscape, evolution moved forward with speed and force, creating a true predator's paradise where only the strongest, fastest, and most adaptable could survive.